Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, January 17th, 2020. And even though we said we are back from our break, technically, we're still taking a week off. This is our spiritual forms, as we are going to be giving you a spiritual reckoning of the year to come. I am, of course, your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody's had an awesome holiday season, as well as a great new year so far. You know, a lot of people thought that 2020 was going to be the end of all things. It hasn't ended just yet, so at least that's helpful. And let's go ahead and introduce the panel before we get into our agenda tonight. So, first things first, we have from the Darkness Cthulian dimension that he is always coming here in astral form from. He's probably the best he's the best of us to be able to achieve a ghost form. Alex the Shadow Blazer, how are you?
I'm doing well, because inventory is behind me, and I guess now it's just back to business as usual. Plus, this week, as of this recording, that is, this week of this recording, Makoto Shinkai's Weathering With You is hitting our area on Wednesday night, and I'm going to go see it, and I'm very excited for that.
Very cool. I look forward to hearing what you think of it. And also joining us is Studio Ghost Utah, aka Stephen Romney, of From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, Martial March, Monster Clash, and whatever else he decides to do that is just pure movie magic, including his ghostly astral form. Stephen Romney, how you doing?
Well, doing pretty good. Just been trying to take these few weeks slow, easing myself in the new year, trying to, straighten out my health, encourage some healthier habits, trying to start this on the right foot. Unfortunately, I already failed my equivalent of dry January, where I tried to go through the month without fast food and soda within the same day. So.
You know what? Like, this is kind of this is actually one thing that I know a few of our listeners would like us to talk about is like what, if we have any goals for the new year. I know some of us don't really plan that out. I technically don't, because the way that people make New Year's resolutions, like, they're always going to be breakable. But I don't know about you, Romney. The goal that I basically made was to just kind of lessen the stuff that I shouldn't be doing and increasing the stuff I should be doing. And at that point, like, hopefully the scale kind of balances itself out. So at that point, I wouldn't feel too bad, because, I mean, old habits die hard.
Yeah. And for me, what I like to do, rather than saying, oh, it's going to be my resolution for the whole year, I always kind of break it down. My goal was like, okay, I'm going to try going for the whole month. Wasn't quite able to do the month, but I at least made it a good 2 weeks. So I made it halfway through, yeah. So not a total wash.
Exactly. And I you know what? I'd call that a victory personally, because I'm kind of there with you. Like, it's really tempting to not have to worry about cooking. And so at that point, I just go instantly for the fast food one. And so, like, my goal in that regard, because I kind of have a similar one, is just like go a week with, first of all, like, cut all of your stuff in half and see if you can go a week without more than like one fast food run or something like that. And that's at least what I would try to do on that. I have plenty of other goals, though. One is to learn to cook, because heaven forbid, like, I don't know. Like, I make the joke, and Alex can kind of attest to it. I blacken everything I touch.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I've got some recipes that are pretty easy that I could send your way, because I keep making the joke that one of these days I'm just going to put a cooking show on my channel, because I keep finding these recipes. I'm thinking, oh yeah, this would make for a good video, but shooting video of cooking is really, really hard.
Oh yeah, like, I one of the things that makes me laugh is when gaming streamers, like, Maximilian Dude, his wife does cooking shows occasionally on the stream, and he has to, like, completely rework his brain to the new camera setup that has to happen with the kitchen, and it freaks him the hell out. And it's kind of funny to watch. So go ahead, Romney. Sorry.
Yeah, and so, I mean, on the bright side, I'm at least keeping one of my goals of actually reading through the mountain of books that I have amassed for myself.
Good.
If people have been following me on my Instagram, at the time of recording, I posted my first review of the first book I finished for the year. So at least I'm on track with some of them. So again, you win some, you lose some.
Exactly. And at that point, like, that's why I'm also kind of taking the opposite approach of, like, instead of kicking myself in the butt for not attaining the goals, I'm probably just, like, my goal is to at least look back at it and go, well, you did this, and this. And instead, like, take kind of a whole new approach to kind of motivate me, instead of just beating the crap out of me, which is as Alex can attest, I do that all the time. Like I am my worst nightmare when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, aren't we
So
all?
Alex, any goals you want to share really quick before we get into tonight's main event?
I suppose if I have a goal, it's just to get more regular about squirreling a little bit of money away into savings each paycheck, or at least several times during the month. Been trying to do that since last year, and I just always keep lapsing on it. So I'm gonna start making that my goal for this year and for these months to come. Is just keep putting a little bit away in savings every so often.
Yeah, I know that one too. Like, unfortunately, like with my genetics, it's way too tempting to go and burn a hole in my pocket. If you want, I've got a book somewhere that I can just give to you. It's like a tiny little handbook to kind of teach you how to save and how to be able to do it without hurting too much.
Yeah, all right.
So it's like a little Dave Ramsey book, but it's like a little. It's like this thick. I know a lot of people can't see the video feed, but it's really thin. And it just gives guidelines of like what can help to be able to save just a little bit of money every paycheck. So yeah, but if you want that, I can give it to you. So I know that we start things off with the small talk, but it's actually working out because we're all kind of coming back from a vacation mode, because now it's the year 2020. And I don't know about you guys. I was so happy to put 2019 in my rear view mirror. Like, you guys can't begin to believe it. I was not sad at all to see 2019 go. I don't even care about everybody saying like this is the impending apocalypse in 2020 because of all the crap that's going to happen. I don't care. 2019 was the apocalypse for me.
Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing that I would say to summarize kind of the problem with 2019, it's that everybody was kind of hyperbolic with their language. But then again, I guess that's just been a thing since 2016. So
yeah, and some people have been making the argument since 2015. I kind of agree with both. And I get where a lot of people think it's going to be the end of all things in 2020. But frankly, I mean, this is the weirdest way to be able to look at it, but 2020 cannot be as bad as 2019 was for me. So I'll just take that.
Well, I mean, if it is really the end of days, it just means we'll get to watch Arnold Schwarzenegger fight the devil.
Cool. I mean, there's no downside there. So hopefully he's trained properly.
Well, I mean, he's been getting moderately back into shape. I mean, he's not like back to like his Mr. Universe days because he's no longer.
Oh yeah,
and that's mainly.
I don't know. Given his age, I don't think he's gonna get those pecs again.
Well,
and
that's that he's no longer taking steroids. That's the reason.
Yeah. Well, even then, like I would guess like his skin's like he can't be in the best of shape. I mean, given the political career as well as the fact that he wasn't keeping himself up to speed for many, many years there.
Yeah, that and just people kind of have a misunderstanding of how muscles work. I mean, Jaxplay did a good video of kind of explaining how when we see people like Chris Pratt, Hugh Jackman, Chris Evans looking like cut and ripped, it's because first they drink a lot of water, and then prior to them shooting, they then don't drink any, so that the skin and the muscles just all pull tight, making themselves look as cut and ripped as possible, but nobody looks like that 24/7. Not even the people who work out regularly.
No, and the problem is and you probably know this better than most, Romney, is that atrophy is a bastard.
Mm-hmm.
When you aren't doing stuff, atrophy can come back and bite you hard.
Yep.
And even Arnold knows that.
Well, yeah, atrophy.
So that's why I'm saying I don't know if he's going to get that golden body again because atrophy is going to play into it to some extent.
True, but he probably still has at least some latent strength from that training because even if you stop for a while, if you spent a number of time like really training your body to be physically strong, that will still stick with you. Especially if you still are moderately active, but not to the point of working out like 30 hours a week.
Oh yeah, but he's got to still be like an ox to some extent. Like those muscles are not as atrophied anymore. I mean, I just barely saw a picture of him out at like his log cabin where he was hauling logs, and like we're talking big old pieces of log that I'm just like sitting there going, there's no possible way I could lift. But given the fact that he's done a lot of that weight training, he probably still has a lot of that left.
Yeah, that's kind of the difference between bodybuilding and strongman training. Whereas bodybuilding is about aesthetics, strongman training is about pure, raw, functional strength. And if you look at the people who do those weightlifting competitions, they ain't looking like Greek gods. They sometimes they have like a gut. They look kind of like Wilson Fisk, basically.
Yeah, in a weird way. But I already know that we're kind of frustrating the heck out of Alex. But with 2020 on the horizon,
Actually, it's kind of
go ahead.
This is all kind of appropriate because I am watching an anime right now that deals with a lot of these topics. So this is all like, yeah, I kind of know all this stuff now because I've been watching this anime.
I'm guessing it's the Dunbaru one, or
yeah, that one.
yeah,
It sounds to me like something I got to pick up.
It's on my list. It's just I don't have a Crunchyroll subscription anymore, so I haven't been able to follow anything.
Well, you can still watch stuff. You just have to deal with the ads.
Yeah, it's just
next time I get a guest pass, I'll give it to you. Actually, I gotta step out for a bit, guys. If you'll give me for a minute.
That's all right. We'll just keep things going. And then if we need to, we can take a break after that. But like we said, 2020 is supposed to be like the year of the apocalypse when it comes to things like politics. But as far as games, I know a lot of people were looking at 2020 negatively, but now they have reason to not. I mean, for crying out loud, at the end of this year, we might be looking at a new console generation. A lot of really anticipated games have been held back for 2020 in some cases. And so at that point, let's go ahead and, before we start talking 2020, let's wrap up 2019 into a nice little bow, shall we?
Yeah, a bow that we will then tie around a boat and set on fire.
We will send into the ocean and then we will set it on fire because even the water won't be able to cool it. So I have no problem doing that. 2019 was just that horrible for me. But let's go ahead and start things off with the best game of 2019 that we played. Now, per listener request, I'm actually going to modify this just a little bit. Instead of a top 3, I'm going to ask for basically a top 2 games that you played that you just loved in 2019. And also a game that you guys are currently playing that you would recommend to other people. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a game that came out in 2019. If it's an indie game, we have no problem setting out props to indie game creators, because the bottom line is it doesn't matter what year it is. They need to earn whatever money they can off of those games. And if it's an older game, that's fine too. Like, this is just a game that you would recommend that you play consistently, that others can play as well. Romney, do you want to go ahead and kick things off with your best games of 2019?
I'll go ahead. It is a bit tough since I didn't play that many games as they came out. So I'm kind of scrambling a bit here, thinking of the ones that I played this year that I actively enjoyed. It's hard to think of two. I only really have one that comes to mind. No, wait, yeah. There is a second one, because I remembered that the other game I enjoyed came out in 2019. So the first one that I would consider like my absolute favorite game of 2019, the one that I put the most time into, the one that I spent the most time playing, Fire Emblem Three Houses. That should come as a surprise to nobody who is familiar with our show. I'm the diehard Fire Emblem nerd. And I would argue that Three Houses is probably the best game.
That's what I've heard. Like, this has taken a lot of the past and been able to fix a lot of the problems with it, as well as implement a lot of really cool things in the meantime. And one of the things that's been surprising to me is, I don't know if you've been seeing this, but online there is a major push right now for the 5th character of DLC for Smash to be the main character of Three Houses.
I mean, I can understand the argument of including Byleth, but I'm gonna be like the naysayer where I don't think it should be Byleth, because Fire Emblem is already well represented in Smash Brothers, and we already have 2 gender swapping characters with Robin and Corrin. I mean, I understand the idea. I mean, the only way I could see it is if they do kind of a unique spin on it, instead of it just being Byleth. The way I would do it if I was in Sakurai's position is I would basically make Byleth something like an echo of Pokemon Trainer, but then instead of the Pokemon, you would have the 3 lords from Three Houses, Dimitri, Claude, and Edelgard, and basically having it where they switch out in battle. That would be the way I would do it, because I feel that would at least be a unique spin instead of, just another sword wielder, because every lord in every Fire Emblem game ever is a sword wielder. But knowing Sakurai and how many characters are already representing Fire Emblem, I don't see it. I'm still holding out.
No, and frankly, I think you and me are kind of in the same agreement here. We like the fact that other companies are being brought in, that other companies are getting involved, and I would like to see that vein continue.
Yeah, I mean,
just because it creates a whole lot more possibilities. Even though like the top 3 right now that are in consideration or that are the highest rumored are Ryu Hayabusa, that's Tecmo and Team Ninja that they'd be working
Tecmo
with.
Koei, which they've worked with before because they worked on Fire Emblem Three Houses, Metroid Other M, both Hyrule and
so it's
Fire Emblem.
It's highly likely, but it would also it's another company that they're working with. The other one is Fulgore, which would be from Killer Instinct, so that would also hopefully accompany another Microsoft announcement of Killer Instinct coming to the Switch. And then at that point, also maybe announcing Killer Instinct 2 for Xbox Series X. That one I would love to see personally, just because, given Killer Instinct's roots and given the fact that it was an old Rare game that actually was surprisingly popular in the late end of the Super Nintendo's lifespan, I would love to be able to see that happen. And considering how popular, where a lot of people make the comparison, the original Xbox sold Halo, or Halo sold the original Xbox, the same argument could be made of Killer Instinct back in 2013 with the Xbox One, because a lot of people bought that specifically for Killer Instinct. And keep in mind, at that time, there was no PC release. There was no compatibility or anything like that. You had to get the Xbox One to play it.
Yeah.
So again, that would be working with Microsoft, and then the other one is Sora from Kingdom Hearts, which would be working with Square Enix again. And I wouldn't mind that either, because Sora is kind of a character that does feel like he could be in Smash.
And plus, in keeping with the rule of on a Nintendo system, he was in both Dream Drop Distance for the 3DS and Chain of Memories for the Game Boy Advance.
Yes.
So it fits with that rule. I would personally be...
Well, and you could also couple that with an announcement of like more Kingdom Hearts games getting moved over to the Switch. I don't know how they would do it, but they could couple that with that announcement, and that would sell it.
True.
As far as a lot of people were concerned.
But yeah, true. But my money is still more, at least my choice would still be more Ryu Hayabusa, not just because of, it's the relationship with Koei Tecmo, but because the Ninja Gaiden trilogy on NES. I mean, you have the first Ninja Gaiden available on Nintendo Switch Online's NES library, and Ryu Hayabusa is like one of the characters, because you already have Simon Belmont, the other uber hard franchise representation, and compared to the other characters Tecmo Koei would offer, Ryu would be the safest option to use, because you ain't seeing anyone from Dead or Alive in there. I mean, maybe if they decide to do Dynasty Warriors and bring in like Zhao Yun or Cao Cao, but then again, Dynasty Warriors hasn't really had any representation on Nintendo consoles, so...
No, I would consider Dynasty Warriors, like, if PlayStation All-Stars was still a thing, I would expect a Dynasty Warriors announcement on that, because I do know that there's a lot of loyalty with the Dynasty Warriors franchise on Sony, but I don't know if that would work out on Nintendo. And here's the thing, too. I know a lot of people are going to bring up another Nintendo hard game that should get representation, but you were going to get one representation from Konami, and I'm glad it's Castlevania. I don't think Contra would have worked, and I agree with you completely. Like, the difficulty argument, when I think NES hard, I think the Castlevania games, and I think the Ninja Gaiden trilogy, because I love the fact that online there's still some debate as to which is harder, the current games or the old games.
Yeah.
Because there are strong arguments to be made for both.
Indeed. And so kind of getting back on point, with Fire Emblem Three Houses being the game I sunk the most time into, one, it's got a lot of replayability. Two, the story. One thing I've liked is that Nintendo has finally accepted that, hey, a lot of our audience has grown up. Let's actually tailor some of these franchises to these older audiences. And so they've started doing that with Fire Emblem, realizing, okay, well, this is a war series. There's no point in trying to keep it PG-13. Let's embrace the M rating, aim it, like, skew older, and it's allowed for a really, really engaging story, regardless of which of the lores you choose, because each time you play the game and choose a different house, you see a whole different side of the conflict and see a whole different series of events. And so there's a lot of replay value, especially with all the DLC they've been putting out, adding newer characters, story content, and even new features in the monastery itself. And so that's my number one choice. As for my second choice, like my second most favorite game, I'm a bit torn, but I think I'm going to have to give it to the Resident Evil 2 remake. Just given that how polished, how well put together it was. it was between that and Devil May Cry 5, but between the two, I'm leaning more towards Resident Evil. It knew what it wanted
Yeah.
to be. It took the original story, improved it. Granted, there are some issues, such as, the discrepancies with Annette Birkin in both Claire and Leon's stories, but it's a nice, polished package. They learned the lessons they learned from Resident Evil 7 and applied them masterfully to the story of Resident Evil 2.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, the bottom line is that well, Capcom has made a horrible conflict this year for a lot of gamers, because whether or not, like, you're going to lose at least to some extent when you're creating these lists, because whether or not Devil May Cry is higher or Resident Evil's higher, they both deserve that acclaim. They really do. And it almost feels like if you put one above the other, that you're somehow saying that there's something bad about it. And there really isn't about either game. And so at that point, like, I have a feeling that those are going to be making a pick in mine personally, but it's just because, like, it's very difficult to put one above the other because they both were so good. This has been one of those golden years for Capcom in the games that they've delivered. So I could completely understand putting either one above those, and I don't think that you're saying anything bad personally about Devil May Cry.
No, it's just by virtue of Resident Evil being the one that I played first through the year, and I replayed that game, and again, this was before I even posited the idea of doing a Monster Clash analysis of Resident Evil 2. It lost in the poll, but with Resident Evil 3 Remake coming out this year, or at least close to the end of this year, who knows? If people want me to do the Monster Clash of Resident Evil 2, the option's still on the table. But the fact that I replayed that game, I think I played it a total of 5 times, like, with both campaigns, playing it through, that kind of shows, like, okay, this is a game that got me hooked, had me going for a really long while, and also with a lot of the free content. That's kind of what ultimately decided it for me. Whereas Devil May Cry, yeah, you still have stuff like the Bloody Palace, but the main campaign is not as replayable unless you're trying the harder difficulties and you're trying to unlock all the extra content, like those really, really, really expensive taunts.
Yeah, exactly. So those are your two games. What is a game currently that you are playing that you would recommend to somebody out there if they're not playing it already?
Ugh, that's a tough one, since I've been trying to make my way through my...
And the funniest part about that whole thing is that you've basically already put two games with very high replayability.
Yeah, and yet...
So now this is kind of a tough one.
Well, it's a tough one, and the ironic thing is I'm not actually currently playing through either of them because I'm trying to get through my massive backlog, because if people follow me on Instagram at the time we're recording this, I posted a picture of my whiteboard that's tracking the games that are in progress that I still need to beat. And so I've been making my way back through, but I guess one game I would recommend, I played it a little bit earlier during the weekend to kind of unwind. It's an indie game, it's an older one. It was originally released for the 3DS, but they just ported a kind of a collection on the Switch about a couple of years ago, and that's going to be Gunman Clive. It's basically a very straightforward Mega Man sort of clone platformer that's really fun. I mean, yeah, you don't really get like the whole, oh, you beat the various bosses and get their powers. It's literally jump and shoot, man. Just brought to its bare essentials with a Western coat of paint. It's a good game. It's really fun. The design is really well done. And it's also a case where it shows that appeal can go a long way.
Yeah, not only that, but like it makes me very, very happy that a lot of people have now realized that the Castlevania / Mega Man formula works really great for indie gaming. And so at that point, you can have amazing games like Shantae or Shovel Knight to be able to showcase those formulas in whole new lights. And here's the cool part. You could just keep creating, because it doesn't necessarily need to be attached to like a series of games. You can make a whole new experience and get the same level of flavor from it.
Yeah, I mean, and the cool thing is that with both Gunman Clive games, they were made by two brothers from Germany. So if you want indie cred, you can literally buy the collection for like $5 on the Nintendo eShop right now, because they have their New Year's sale. And I would highly recommend it. I think it's actually marked down to like $2.99. Highly recommend it. They're short, but they're nice, fun, simple platform games that are both easy to get into, but also really, really challenging. And where else but video games are you going to be playing a cowboy riding a giant panda, or better yet, a cowboy riding a giant freaking pterodactyl fighting against people in blimps? These are things that happen in the game. It is awesome.
Sells the game for me. I don't know about you, Alex.
Yeah, it sounds really weird.
All right, so Alex, you're up next. We're gonna do two games that you would recommend from 2019 that you liked, and then also if you have a game that you're currently playing, it doesn't matter if it's indie or not. If you want to recommend it to the audience, you're more than welcome to do that.
Right. Okay. So, well, the game I played, a game that I'm currently playing through still, is I'm still working my way through Pokemon Sword, and it is yes, it is a little light on the content compared to its previous iterations, but it's still got its charm. I like the character customization, and it's got a nice kind of aesthetic to it, because it obviously this one's kind of based out of like, London, Greater United Kingdom area. And I like that because it not only takes that, but it also kind of like takes that concept, but it also kind of like morphs it with and gives it a bit of a steampunk aesthetic to it, which I think is pretty cool. Just because a lot of steampunk fiction is, set in Britain. And so I think that's what's fun about Pokemon Sword and Shield to me, is definitely the setting is fun. There's a lot of new creatures, and there still are some new features here, so it's not like it's a totally bare bones experience.
You've got tons of content coming very soon.
Yeah,
for Sword.
There's some. I haven't looked too much into the DLC just yet to see if it's worth my time, but
it's pretty much an expansion.
Yeah, but I've been enjoying Sword as it is, so there you go. I'd say that's where it goes for my current playthroughs.
All right, and then for games that you would, so the games that you would say were the best of 2019.
Okay, well, this game's not from 2019, but I did play it this year, for the first time, and that was Super Lucky's Tale. Because
Super Lucky's Tale or new Super Lucky's Tale?
I don't really.
There's a distinction now. Because are you playing it on Switch?
No,
okay.
I played it on Steam.
If you liked it, I'm going to let you get into that, but if you liked it that much, you might want to look into getting the Switch release because they added a bunch of stuff into the game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, bunch of new levels and things like that. That's why they called it New Super Lucky's Tale.
All right, I have to look into that one then, yes. So I did actually try to play this game a few years ago. Once I got to sample it with you, which was fun. Then I tried buying... Yeah.
This Microsoft Store, you need to fix some shit.
Yeah, I downloaded it from the Microsoft Store, and whatever reason, it's like I could play the game, and I could play it for like a few hours at a time, and but then I could never get the game to relaunch, not without a complete reinstall of it, which would, of course, just erase all my progress. So it's like either it was play the game in one sitting or just say fuck it, and I said fuck it, but finally it came to Steam, so I got it on Steam, and now I get to play through the game start to finish, and that was a lot of fun as somebody who likes the old school mascot platformers of days of yore, like the Banjo games or Sonic the Hedgehog or Mario, but which is what this is very reminiscent of, leaning a little more into the Mario / Banjo-Kazooie camp. So yeah, I'd say Super Lucky's Tale was a lot of fun.
Okay. And so what would be another game of 20? Like, what would you consider to be the best out there? Since you already have two games that you would recommend. I have a feeling I know a game in 2019 you will recommend, but or that you would want to be the best. But do you have any for me?
No, I really can't say that I do.
Resident Evil 2, then.
Well, I mean, I haven't played it for myself. I've only watched a Let's Play of it.
That's what I'm saying, is like you've seen it at the very least.
Yes, and I can totally concur. It looks like a really solid game, so...
Yeah. So at that point, there you go. It looks like Resident Evil 2 also makes it into Alex's bracket. For myself, the two games... Here's the thing. I kind of had the same conflict that Romney did, because there were two amazing Capcom games that came out this year. And like putting one above the other just felt like blasphemy, because the bottom line is they both were really great games, really great standouts in their genres specifically. And so it was very difficult for me to separate them. But since Resident Evil 2 has already gotten a little bit of a spotlight from you guys, I'm going to go ahead and separate and say that I have no problem saying my best game of the year was Devil May Cry 5. To me, it was basically the masterstroke of Hideaki Itsuno. I just don't like, even if he did Devil May Cry 6, I don't know how he would make it better than what Devil May Cry 5 was. It was a love letter to the fans. It was able to solve a lot of story elements that people were either asking about or didn't know that they wanted to know. And then on top of that, it also gave a lot of closure and resolution that many, many, many people wanted from a lot of these characters. And that's kind of in my opinion, one of the reasons that the Ninja Theory Devil May Cry reboot didn't go off the ground that well, is because they were still invested in the characters that were being shown to them. They didn't want to reboot the universe. And this, I honestly believe, if Devil May Cry 5 had hit before the Ninja Theory game did, maybe they would have had a better reception to it.
Yeah, but a lot of people forget. A lot of people lay too much blame with Ninja Theory, though, because a lot of the controversial decisions, that was Capcom being stupid. And most specifically, that was when Inafune was doing...
Like, my biggest complaint with the game was the Virgil DLC, and that was Capcom. That was 100% Capcom being Capcom.
Well, yeah, not just, like, the Virgil DLC, but the whole, we need Dante to be, like, edgier and stuff like that. We need to do this and that and this and that, because Inafune is like, we need to appeal to the global audience. And by that, he's like, let's completely abandon everything we've established and work with Western studios instead of, making good games, but also not expecting them to sell Call of Duty numbers. But again, Capcom learned their lesson.
They did. They did, in my opinion, and Devil May Cry 5 is a perfect example of them learning their lesson. So the other game that I'm going to recommend, I've had not as much time with it as I have with Devil May Cry 5. And again, this is going to make my wife just come in here and want to strangle me because it's not Kingdom Hearts 3. I love Kingdom Hearts 3, but frankly, in my opinion, with all of the DLC trailers, it's going to be just so much better in 2020. So at that point, I'm not going to recommend it, but the game that I am going to recommend that I think needs to have at least some kind of recognition is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I can't even believe I'm saying this because it's an EA game and I'm about to just lose my shit on it. It is wonderful. It is glorious. I cannot even begin to tell you guys that it doesn't feel like an EA game. It doesn't feel like it was rinsed, lathered, repeated, and just shoved out there being the turd that it was. This feels like a game that Konami or Capcom in the old days would make. And it works. And what's even weirder about it is that a lot of people know over the last year, I have been giving the Dark Souls series another chance with my wife, Andrea, via live streams. And I've been enjoying it a lot more because I can sit back and laugh at my mistakes with people instead of just being in a room and getting slowly more pissed. One of the reasons that Jedi Fallen Order works so well is because it not only integrates elements of other games, but the main gameplay scheme of it is Dark Souls. I'm not kidding. It works the same way that Dark Souls does, and it's beautiful. And it's so satisfying. This is the Jedi combat, or the lightsaber combat that I wish the Force Unleashed had given me. And it's so much more satisfying than the Force Unleashed to me. And part of that is because of how the Dark Souls engine works and all the integrations that they've done with it. Granted, there's a bunch of other schemes in here. Like, for some reason, they decided to use Metroid Prime's map system, and I love it. I love the fact that they added Metroid Prime's map system, which I hated in the Prime series because it was so freaking complicated, but they found a way to simplify it. I love that concept. I like the Dark Souls aspect of it. I love the replayability of certain areas that you're able to revisit now that you have new Force powers to be able to mess around with. It is just, I can't begin to tell you guys that I feel so dirty saying that an EA game is this awesome. See, they've completely left me. Like, I've broken all of the candid rules of gamehood.
Well, not necessarily. I think it's more EA itself is starting to kind of wake up and realize, okay, what we've been doing also hasn't been working because Bethesda's been trying to copy us and Bethesda's crashing and burning. That's maybe...
Yeah.
I guess it's more... Maybe it's like a weird thing where like one game company always just has like being the embodiment of all evil, and somehow EA tricked Bethesda into opening the box that transferred the curse.
that might have been what technically happened there. But here's the thing. EA also has a track record of like every, like, 1 year they'll have a really amazing year, and then the next 2 or 3 are going to be like, that year never existed kind of thing. Like, they actually have a track record of this. So I'm glad that this thing exists, but they're already talking about a sequel, and that just makes me go, because I could totally see EA coming in there and going, oh, we could totally make this microtransactionable.
Yeah.
And no. There's a reason From Software still hasn't done that, to my knowledge, with the Dark Souls series. Sekiro didn't do it. Neo and the developers of Neo haven't done it. Just don't. Just leave this alone. Let them continue to make the games that they want to make. But I could totally see EA coming in here and going, oh, we can make this a cash cow.
Yeah, I mean, I can see EA doing that, but I also see Lucasfilm kind of reining them in a little bit, given that we're still waiting for the fallout from Rise of Skywalker to kind of settle before Lucasfilm kind of moves forward with anything going forward. So I can see EA thinking, oh, let's do a sequel, and Lucasfilm being like, okay, let's wait for the dust to settle a little bit. Let's wait and see where the fan base is before we do any new Star Wars stuff, aside from
Pretty
Mandalorian
much.
Season 2 and the supposed sequel series to Rebels.
Yes. See, no. So, oh yeah, that's right. They did announce that, because they're going to do Season 7 of Clone Wars. They're talking about a sequel series to Rebels. They are going to do Mandalorian Season 2, and then we also have the Obi-Wan series coming. So plenty of stuff coming to Disney Plus very soon. And then the game that I've been regularly playing that I'm going to recommend to you guys, and I know that I've already done this in the past, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because it's just that good a game. Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night.
Oh yeah, I forgot that came out this year too.
I have loved that game since it has come out. I have since then, I haven't entirely beaten it, but I just got the urge to go back and play it from the beginning again. And maybe like make up for some mistakes that I had made during my initial run. And it's still just as satisfying replaying it, replaying areas that I long since had done versus playing current content in that game. I just love it to tears. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Crap. I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head.
Igarashi.
But Iga-san, please continue to make games. You will make money to, like, at this point, all Iga has to do is go to any developer right now and say, I made this, and they will toss out money to him.
Well, to a point. Problem is, there is some problems. I mean, we're still waiting on the DLC, the free DLC that was promised, and apparently when they launched it in Japan, there was a lot of problems with the launch in Japan.
I heard that. I heard that they had some issues in Japan. I'm disappointed to hear that, but I love the game. I absolutely love it. I want Iga to make more. I'm not saying I want Bloodstained 2. I want to make that very clear. I don't want Bloodstained 2. I want him to continue to make Metroidvania games because he is just awesome at it.
Well, I mean, given the way the story goes, I can see them doing a sequel, maybe like as like a prequel, filling in the events, or even just
but what I'm basically imploring to is his artistic side. If he doesn't want to do that, fine, don't worry about it. But go and do something else kind of in this vein. I would play it. Because you created the formula and you have mastered it, sir. I need more of this from you. Because here's the thing. A lot of people out there have also mastered the formula. Like one indie game creator that I'm going to point out is the guy who makes Axiom Verge. He has done a really good job of it. But Iga, just like the stuff you touch it and it's gold. It's absolutely gold.
Well,
you figure things out flawlessly, at least to me.
Well, I mean, the one exception to that would be something like Nano Breaker. That was him trying to make his own version of Devil May Cry.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Stick to the vein that you know, because here's the thing. Not just Nano Breaker, but I mean, Lament of Innocence, Curse of Darkness, those were kind of him as well, trying to branch out into stuff. And to me, like, Lament of Innocence is good, but it's not as good as, say, like Devil May Cry.
Yeah, but especially when you consider, like, looking at the behind the scenes, apparently because of how Iga was able to make the 2D Castlevania games under budget, he literally had, like, no funding for any of the 3D games he directed. So a lot of it is, like, which is it Iga and which is it Konami being Konami?
And to me, like, the explanation I have is it's a little bit of both. Because around that time was when Konami started to do what made them the assholes that they are. So at that point, it is easily a little bit of both. But that being said, those are the games that I will recommend. Now let's go ahead and get into the worst game of the year, and I'm only going to give you one. There's one turd that you played this year that was absolutely horrible, preferably if it's in the year 2019. And I'm just going to go ahead and do mine first because I have a feeling that some people are going to call me a hypocrite, but Astral Chain. Platinum, look, I love you, but you are a hit and miss company, and Astral Chain, when the trailers were coming out, looked amazing. And already I was really worried when I turned it on and you had a create a character feature. And the problem, look, the gameplay is pretty tight in Astral Chain. It's pretty much what you would expect from the people who make Bayonetta. But it's just too bad that the story was boring. Every time they wanted me to go and investigate out something, I was like, You can't do that with a game. Like if I'm feeling like everything that I have to do is a chore, you've already kind of lost me. And frankly, like what I signed on for in this was combat with cyber police dogs. And a lot of the stuff that I did before I eventually dropped the game was investigations. And I'd have like these little tiny combat segments, and then I'd go back to investigations or learning about the other people in the police department that I just didn't care about, and I had no motivation to care about. So the biggest sin of Astral Chain to me is that it's just boring. So at that point, Alex Romney, what is your worst game of 2019?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and go first. It's probably going to get a lot of people screaming at me, and granted, I didn't play a lot of games this year, and so this one earns the worst game accolade due to the fact that it is one of the games, out of all the ones I've played, that I've had the most complaints about mechanically. And so it's going to have to be Death Stranding. Because Death Stranding, and I'm trying to get to the end of the story, but it is a real slog. Like, yeah, I mean, there is that flow state when you get into running deliveries, but at the point that I'm at, which I'm on chapter 8 of the story, I'm starting to run into they made things arbitrarily difficult to pad out the runtime, and not so it's starting to do the kind of the cheap difficulty spikes, not really ones that are like, oh, there's like hazards and stuff you have to account for. This is like, oh no, we're gonna add these arbitrary missions that make things needlessly complicated that don't feel inorganic. And honestly, Kojima should just make movies at this point. I understand he likes telling a story, but I mean, the problem is that at the point that I'm at in the story, it's just been exposition dump after exposition dump after exposition dump. And although there was like the initial premise that kind of hooked me in, all the explanations they're giving now, I'm just like, okay, where was half this crap earlier when, you had a bunch of scenes that would have explained this stuff? And so, yeah, with Death...
So it sounds to me like he's just got... To me, like, okay, I love Metal Gear Solid 4 in the story that it was trying to tell, but a lot of what you're kind of talking about that I'm experiencing with Death Stranding, I personally feel started a little bit in Metal Gear Solid 4, and I haven't played Phantom Pain but from what I understand, it was on steroids then. Like it got supercharged a little bit on Phantom Pain.
A little bit,
and
but
Death Stranding is definitely it worse.
Because with the Phantom Pain, yeah, Kojima has it a little bit, but at least there, Konami had reined him in enough that it wasn't to the degree that it is with Death Stranding. With Death Stranding, this is Kojima completely unchained, and now I'm starting to realize, yeah, maybe there's a reason why Konami kind of had some problems with him. That doesn't completely...
Yeah, a little bit.
That doesn't completely excuse their actions, but looking at this, I just look at this and I'm just like, okay, Kojima, I get it. You liked Blade Runner. I get it. You liked a lot of these American sci-fi movies, but for crying out loud, like, I look at the story of Death Stranding, at least what I've seen so far, and it's kind of the same problem that the Star Wars prequels had. It needed another pass. Someone else, a screenwriter or something, needed to take Kojima aside and think like, okay, I see what you're going for. Let's run this through a couple more rewrites to, narrow the focus and make the story actually make sense. Because
and the other thing too, maybe you'll agree with me on this, but like to me, Metal Gear Solid 4 was still kind of restrictive in its open world features, and one of the things that has held both Phantom Pain as well as Death Stranding back is that this is Kojima untethered. Like he can make these full on open worlds, but the problem is he's not filling them.
I'd make a joke of the whole untethered thing, but it would technically be counted as
Yeah.
a spoiler for Death Stranding if I made the joke.
Yes, please don't. But I mean, that's kind of my issue with it, is that when I think the only reason he hasn't gone to making movies at this point is because he loves interactivity with cutscenes. He loves being able to give you a different camera view and things like that. And so at that point, that's why he sticks to video games. The problem is that he wants to spread out his stories and have like these huge 30-minute cutscenes where he could easily space them a little bit better, and the game would flow so much easier.
Yeah.
Like if a lot of these meetings were like flashbacks that were happening after Norman Reedus's character has like a flash of whatever is trying to attack him at that point, and we had like the flashback of him meeting with the president and also meeting with Die Hard Man. No, I'm not kidding. That's his name, Alex.
Yes.
Yes. His name is Die Hard Man. And so at that point, like if you did those a lot in like flashbacks, I think it would have flowed a little bit better, but I can see the problem is that they leave you out in the world way too much. And then when you get into a cutscene, it takes forever for it to finish.
Yeah, and especially it kind of suffers the bad science fiction problem, the kind of problems that I remember on the last episode we recorded when Brenton talked about his complaints with science fiction. This is the kind of stuff that we mentioned, how they make things overly complicated. They do a bunch of exposition dumps. And for me, it's not just the story, but again, there are arbitrary moments in the gameplay where they make things purposefully harder, but it's not in a way that actually feels like a challenge. This is just, oh, you need to pad this game out for an extra 3 hours, so you're going to throw in this random hurdle in order to basically make us slow down when you've already given us several different ways of moving across the map even more quickly. And I mean, if there was at least a better justification for it, that'd be one thing narratively. But again, I looked at it and I'm just like, okay, this isn't this is unique for the narrative. This is we need you to not, get to these parts of the game before you encounter them because you need to trigger this, that, and the other. It's like, I wouldn't use Dark Souls hard as a better comparison. I think it would be like arcade hard, where it's like, we're going to make this purposely difficult to slow you down, not because we actually are trying to convey something important, but because we need to load the rest of the game.
Yeah, like one of the things I could say positively about Death Stranding is that compared to the Metal Gear games, which in my opinion are some of the most complicated control schemes ever to be devised in video games, period, Death Stranding feels a little bit better than the Metal Gear games. And so at that point, I will at least give it that compliment. But now I'm worried that we are flipping out Alex because he's like, oh crap, is this what I'm walking into from here on? No, dude, you've got like 3 to 4 more games where it's gold. And it's amazing, and he was able to pace things out properly. It's just the last 2 where he's been given access to an open world that has been kind of his downfall.
Yeah, because I mean, the core.
It's kind of like Sonic 06, Alex, where you just have this big, huge world and nothing in it, and that's kind of what Hideo did, where he made an even bigger world and he didn't fill it.
Yeah, but at least there's at least a narrative for nothing there being in it. I think a better way to explain it is that the core gameplay of it works. It's just that Kojima kind of lost sight of having the narrative inform the gameplay organically. It just felt like, again, it's like he wrote out the story in a single draft. Nobody questioned him on it, and they just decided to run with it. It's, again, the Star Wars prequels problem, where he wrote it out in one draft, whereas the story and all the explanations, he needed to at least a couple of more drafts. That's at least what it would call for. At least have someone like look it over and think like, okay, let's actually narrow the focus instead of, having Mads Mikkelsen stop listening partway through the explanation because he can't follow what the hell you're saying. And yes, people listening,
and on top of that, like maybe cutting down on having these huge world maps, because if you're not going to fill them, then what's the bloody point?
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's especially like the Mads Mikkelsen thing. That's not an exaggeration. We covered it on the show where when Kojima was explaining the story to Mads Mikkelsen, like 20 minutes in, he just couldn't follow what the hell he was saying because he was just so confused.
Yeah, because here's the thing: is I love Hideo Kojima, but his ideas right now are so freaking grandiose that he does need to be curbed just a little bit. But let's go ahead and get back onto point here. So we have Death Stranding and we have Astral Chain on the worst games list. Alex, what would you say was the worst game of 2019?
I don't have one.
All right. Can I throw in a couple of suggestions and then we'll make those yours?
Well, okay, but I can only agree if I've ever played them, but go ahead.
Fallout 76.
Well, sure, I can agree from that from a I mean, it's
Anthem?
like I haven't played Fallout 76 or Anthem. It's like
But I
I hear all
think
the
they deserve some recognition in the turd category, though.
sure. It's just I can't say from my own perspective that they are terrible. Other than I don't get why people keep letting themselves get abused by Fallout 76.
Yeah. Well,
They're in
I mean,
an abusive relationship with Bethesda. That's why.
yeah, pretty much. They always think that Bethesda is going to be changed and that they're going to learn from their mistakes, and sadly, they never do.
It's like, I can't leave it. I love it.
I love it. But the other thing, too, is like, I'm glad that some people were able to do that and be able to find something enjoyable out of Fallout 76. After all, you paid your $60, and that's like my biggest problem with a bad game is that if you paid your $60 and you are not getting what you thought you were going to get, that sucks because that's money down the drain that you can't get back. But some people found a way to be able to get a use out of their $60. It's just too bad that unfortunately when they try to improve the game, Bethesda then bans them, and then the $60 goes down the toilet. So the same thing with Anthem. Like I can't say enough that I feel so bad for like all my friends who picked that up. Even my older brother picked it up, and he wasn't invested because they had such a really great idea for potentially an amazing idea that didn't get anywhere near the level of the BioWare treatment that it should have. As we've kind of reported in the past, basically this game was half-assed. Like 2/3 of its development time was just people sitting back and playing pool kind of thing. And then they decided to go make the game. Whereas this game probably deserved like the 100% BioWare treatment, and it got nowhere near that. And that's the crying shame with Anthem, is that it should have gotten that and it didn't. But yeah, those are a couple of examples that we can kind of toss in with Alex. So to kind of wrap up the hour a little bit, let's go into best movies and worst movies of 2019. And I'm going to put in the same caveat. Top two movies, or the top two movies of 2019, and then only one worst. So that being said, Alex, you are our anime expert, so I have a feeling we'll get a lot of interesting picks. Go ahead.
I'd say one of my favorites out of the year would have been the movie Black Fox. I wasn't anticipating it, and it wasn't a total disappointment. I can kind of agree. I feel like the story could have used a bit more refinement. I feel like there could have been some behind-the-scenes problems with that movie. There might have been some issues, but overall, it was entertaining, and I had a lot of fun with it. It's kind of the anime superhero origin story I'd always wanted to see. And, well, I got it. I got it with that movie. So I'll say that was one of my favorites out of the year.
Okay. And then what would be another favorite that you have? Allie has to think.
Sure. I'm not sure if... I want to say... The problem is I'm not sure I saw it this year, if it was last year, but it was the Love, Shinobi, and Other Delusions movie.
Oh, I don't know
That could have been last... That could have been last year. I can't remember. Let me give me a sec. I could go look at my list real quick, see when I added it.
In the meantime, Romney, why don't you give us your best movie picks?
Well, it's tricky because I didn't really see that many movies, so I'm actually looking on IMDb, looking at what was released this year, and trying to see, kind of running through the mental list of, okay, which ones did I see, which ones did I not see? And so, because again, given that I've kind of stepped away from reviewing movies on a regular basis, because tickets are expensive. So let's see. So that's one, and then.
Well, let me go ahead and do another interesting listener question in this regard, because I have a feeling that to mention these would be too obvious, and so in a lot of cases, some of us are probably going to avoid doing it. I already know Alex is probably going to do it. Which would you put higher in regards to the two major movies that came out, which are Avengers Endgame and Star Wars Rise of Skywalker? Which one would you put higher than the other?
Endgame. Because Endgame had a clearer Endgame had a clearer goal of what it was doing. It basically had laid the groundwork. They were more patient with what they were trying to do with Avengers Endgame, whereas Rise of Skywalker, as I mentioned when we did our review, half the movie was basically damage control. because they wanted to try to appease the people who were pissed off about The Last Jedi, which
Yeah.
honestly,
Whereas Marvel didn't have that.
yeah, honestly, like there was something that I saw on YouTube. I can't remember the YouTube user who did it, but they kind of summarized it perfectly. Where the sequel trilogy is not a trilogy; it's 3 films that hate each other.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? The
Mhm.
sequel trilogy, that's exactly how to consider it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because here's the thing: at its best, Rise of Skywalker is Episode 8, and then at that point, it makes you really wanting a ninth episode, go kind of tailing off from where Episode 9 ended. But at the same time, you're not going to get that. So yeah, I actually like that. There are 3 episodes that just hate each other.
Yeah. And so now that I've looked at the list, I do have a bit more of a memory of which films I would consider.
Let's wrap up this question, then we'll get into it because I have a feeling Alex is still working on his stuff. Alex, which would you rate higher, Endgame or Rise of Skywalker?
I would rate Endgame higher as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp. I like Rise of Skywalker. I like a lot of what was being done, but the problem is that when you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the stumbles that they've had in the process, you can take things out like Captain Marvel. Like if you liked or hated Captain Marvel, it didn't really matter in Endgame because she wasn't that involved. Especially in the grand scheme of things, she was not that involved. Spider-Man Homecoming, if you didn't like that, that's okay because you still had No, Homecoming.
Oh, okay.
If you didn't like Homecoming, because Far From Home happened after.
Okay, yeah,
if you didn't like Homecoming, you still had really great moments for Peter in Civil War that you could work with. And so at that point, like there was a lot more going for it. Whereas Rise of Skywalker had 2 movies before it. And so in a lot of cases, the bad kind of shines out a little bit more in that aesthetic. So that's kind of my viewpoint is Endgame's flaws, and there are flaws, don't get me wrong. There are problems that I have with Endgame. They just aren't as prevalent as they are with Rise of Skywalker because there's so many other things that I don't have to consider that I do with Rise of Skywalker. Kind of thing. I like Rise of Skywalker, but the bottom line is that Endgame was the better movie.
Yeah.
So Alex, do you have that second movie?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I did confirm it is. I did see the Love, Chinubio, and Other Delusions movie called Take On Me. I did see it this year, even though it was released last year. But yes, that would be my second favorite movie. So my 2 favorite movies are anime movies this year. Go figure.
Okay. All right, and then Romney, you have your movies?
Yes. Now that I've actually looked through the list and remembered which ones I saw, I do have kind of a list of ones that I liked. I'm gonna kind of split the category between live action and animated, just given that I kind of saw a mix of both. So, as for favorite live action film, I would, given what I saw, like favorite live action film, I'm gonna have to give it to Detective Pikachu because it basically
Oh yeah, that was good.
did what I said they should do. It showed us a side of the Pokemon universe we don't normally get to see in the show or the games. And you can.
I'm going to cut you off, Romney, because you're going to have to give me 5 minutes to go hide under the bed. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, basically,
Yeah, no, I still have I agree with you. I think it's a good movie. I think it actually has an amazing plot, considering that it's kind of based on fan theories. But at the same time, I just some of those designs, including Ditto Face, I can't get over those.
Yeah, but at the same time, it worked. And it also shows that the people working on it were genuinely enthusiastic about the source material. It wasn't this is going to be another, like, crappy, like, rush thing. It's like, no, we are Pokemon fans. We want to actually, like, give it our all. And so that would be out of everything that I saw from the live action front, because a lot of the other live action films were ones I had problems with. So it's more by virtue of Detective Pikachu being a film that I saw and didn't really have any problems watching. I legitimately enjoyed it. As for an honorable mention for live action, I'm kind of in the minority saying this, and I'm learning that more and more with each passing day, but I'm also going to have to give it to Dark Phoenix, which I'm the only person I know who actually liked X-Men Dark Phoenix, because again, I'm one of the few people that acknowledges that the X-Men are a team. It's not just the Wolverine show featuring the X-Men. And
we'll have to reach out to you. We haven't seen Dark Phoenix yet, but I would be very interested to talk to you about it, because I remember how you put it. If you like Apocalypse, which I do, I like Apocalypse, then you will like Dark Phoenix. And so at that point, it's like, okay, now I'm invested.
Yeah, especially considering that, given that there are huge elements of the Dark Phoenix saga they couldn't use because of the legal limbo the film was under when it was being made. It made a nice, simple, character-driven story, which is really all you need to do with characters like the X-Men. I mean, people really overthink it. The problem is people go into the X-Men movies and they're expecting the Avengers, but the X-Men are not the Avengers. It's a whole different dynamic at play.
That's
there.
actually like my prime worry now that the X-Men are in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or they're gonna be.
Yeah.
Is that they are going to be treated like the Avengers, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean,
in fact, here's one of the things that I'm gonna say right here and now. If you did Phoenix the same way that you I'm not saying all of the movie, but if you did the Phoenix power design, kind of like how you did Captain Marvel, you'd be on track for me as far as that's concerned.
Yeah,
but it just depends on how you play it out.
Yeah, and I mean, especially considering that now the New Mutants movie coming out this year is going to be part of the MCU, I have concerns.
Mm-hmm. I have concerns with the Eternals, how they're going to justify bringing the X-Men into it, and that's just because like. I don't know much on the Eternals, but at the same time, I'm also just very worried about bringing the X-Men into the MCU.
Yeah.
Because now they just kind of don't fit.
Yeah, what people would argue they kind of don't fit in the main comics continuity, especially in the wake of
But, I mean, they've already kind of made it... I don't know if it's going to be Avengers 4, but they've already kind of hinted at the fact that one of the Avengers movies they would really like to be is Avengers versus X-Men, which is a worry for me.
Yeah, especially given what's currently going on in the comics in the wake of House and Powers of X, which was the big event for this year, which I enjoyed, but again, not without its problems. Moving on to the animation category, because I also saw a number of animated films. Between the animated films that I saw, I didn't get to see a lot of the anime movies because, again, with my new job, I'm just not able to go to those screenings. And so, out of the animated movies that I saw this year, my pick for the best animated film would have to be The Addams Family. And that's for the same reason why I liked Detective Pikachu. You can tell the people working on the Addams Family movie.
That one I want to see.
Yeah.
It looks really, really very much... It looks very much like there's tons of love to it.
Exactly. You can tell the people working on it were genuine fans of the series, both in the various incarnations. And
well, from what I've been told, and maybe you can cover this for me, is like it's not just love for the series, it's love for the Raul Julia movies. It's love for the like one or two revamps that they did. They showed a lot of love to a lot of Addams Family characters.
Well, yeah, it pretty much pulls from all those elements because the designs you see in the movie are the designs from the original comics that started the whole thing. So it pulls from all these different things, and so it's one of the few family movies that didn't immediately frustrate me because it took a lot of the elements that you see in a lot of the family movies that make a lot of people roll their eyes, and it kind of, made fun of those elements like, oh, these are things that are normally in these family movies. They are supposed to be kind of annoying. That's kind of the joke. And so for the best animated movie, I mean, granted, again, I know there's a lot of anime movies that came out, but I didn't get to see them. So in terms of the best Western animated movie, if we really want to separate that distinction, I'm going to give it to the Addams Family because I also saw Frozen 2, but between the two, if I had to choose which one to see again, I'd go and rewatch Addams Family over Frozen 2 because Addams Family, there's that passion there. It doesn't have that cynicism that a lot of these other movies have. And so, yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. Of course, it helps that I got to see it because of T-Mobile Tuesdays, but yeah, that film, much like Detective Pikachu, has that passion into it. You can tell when there's genuine passion and enthusiasm in a film that is being made, something that's been missing from a lot of movies that came out this past year.
Yeah, and frankly, that's actually been one of the stronger influences of me not going to the theater, which, by the way, the fact that we mentioned it, we actually, in the middle of this vacation, we kind of got called out a little bit. I wish that I had the email in front of me, but somebody basically sent an Instagram to us saying, well, then you're not showing support for all those movies because you're not spending money in the actual theater. Well, okay, if they want to lower the prices, I'll go out and show as much support as you want. But the bottom line is that I'm not going to take a risk for $8 to $10 a seat. Right. I'm not going to do it.
This is why I like T-Mobile Tuesdays because that's how I saw most of my movies this year. Is because T-Mobile would like, oh, you want to see this movie for only $4, and I'm just like, okay, if it's only $4.
Exactly. Like if it was matinees like that, then me and like another complaint that we've seen on the Draken Shadow channel is like, what happened to Draken Shadow vlogs? Too much money to actually make it work. Like matinee is $8 to $10 now. So at that point,
time.
What was that?
Plus the time, you know,
Yeah.
you got 2 kids you got to take care of, so.
Exactly. So at that point, like if that continues, then that's obviously going to be an issue. But that's kind of why that happened is like things got too expensive, at least in my perception. And it was harder to justify the risk for a movie that might not be as good versus because like here's honestly, what would you guys rather pay? Would you guys rather pay $8 to $10 on a movie that might not be so good? Or would you rather pay like $2 to rent it on Amazon and give it a try? It means you have to wait an extra 6 months, but would you rather pay less money just to make sure that if it's a bomb, you don't feel as bad?
I mean,
That's been kind of my year.
yeah, I mean, especially now that there's the whole hack that I've let people know about of buying the discounted DVDs from the red boxes since they have to liquidate stock. I mean, there are a number of films that, and I noticed that it colored my opinion with some of the films, especially the film that I consider the worst that I saw this year, which we'll get into later, where if I had paid full price, I would have been pissed.
Yeah, like my sure bets this year were Avengers Endgame. I had to see that in theaters. Shazam, I had to see that in theaters because I knew it was going to be good given the trailers. And Rise of Skywalker. Those are the 3 movies I saw in theaters. The rest, like my viewing of Detective Pikachu was on Amazon because that just was a much better risk to me, a much more justifiable risk than going into the theater and basically walking away with post-traumatic stress. So like that to me was just the better way to go around it. I've even seen movies that I didn't want to take sure bets going to the theater to see. I finally got around to seeing Bumblebee, everybody. I finally got around to seeing Venom because of this, because it's a much more justifiable risk to spend $2 versus 8 to 10. I mean, I'll meet you in the middle if you want to go back to 5, but as long as matinee is like $8 to $10, no, it's a harder justification. So you guys have both given your best, and here's the reason that I wanted to keep in the question of Rise of Skywalker versus Avengers Endgame, because I had a feeling that it's usually up to me to give that nod to Endgame or Rise of Skywalker because I'm usually the guy that does that. But here's the thing. I've been able to experience a lot of the 2019 movies. In fact, some of the ones that I really want to see, I still haven't seen yet because me and my wife watch them in the comfort of our own home. And so at that point, I'm good. Actually, there was another one that I did see in theaters, and this one actually did make my list. And that is, so that my number 2 is Alita Battle Angel, because considering the level of nervousness I was walking into that movie, and this is going to be the theme with my 2 movies, is I was pleasantly surprised at how good it was. Like, despite the big eye problem that a lot of people have with Alita, there was just so much good done in that movie to stay true to the manga as well as to the anime that I can't help but give compliments for. I love the fact that Alita did as well as it did compared to Captain Marvel, just because at that point, this is probably something that a lot of people know. I always root for the underdog. And unfortunately, because of the MCU, Captain Marvel was the favorite. And so the fact that Alita did better, I was very happy about that because I always like to root for the underdog. And this was an underdog to get behind. A lot of things were done right in Alita. And frankly, I kind of hope that they get green lighted for a sequel. I would love to see it.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead, Ron.
It would be nice to see, but knowing now that it's Disney that owns Fox.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem.
Yeah, and especially given that this was not just a rival production, but then they would also have to deal with James Cameron, who, well, I mean, it really depends on whether or not Disney would want to keep it going or not, but I kind of doubt Disney is going to be like, oh, okay, well, this wasn't really worth the investment, so they're probably just going to, try to pretend it doesn't exist, like what Universal did with Streets of Fire.
So my number 1
the
movie...
only way I could see this
Alan,
happening... Yeah, I mean, granted, we're still a ways off from this, but maybe Cameron can get Disney to play ball if Avatar 2 becomes a big success. But again, we're such a ways off from Avatar 2 getting released.
Well, and he needs to get Avatar 2 off the ground to see whether or not the other movies that he's contracted for are going to be justified.
Well, he's shooting...
Avatar 2 is working. Yeah, he's shooting it now. But we're still like 2 or 3 years out from it.
And the other thing is that he's shooting
but that's not what I'm talking about. We still have a contract where he's got to make like 4 to 6 Avatar movies, And at this point, like, Avatar 2 had better be just amazing to be able to build up to that.
But I know with Avatars 2, 3, and 4, he's shooting them concurrently. So it's not just, oh, he's doing one.
Okay.
He's shooting those 3 at the same time. Basically, he's doing what Peter Jackson did with the Lord of the Rings trilogy,
Which is probably the better way to do it.
Well, depending on the story he's trying to tell, which, granted, James Cameron, I've got faith. I mean, with the James Cameron movies I've seen, I haven't seen one that's made me roll my eyes or disappointed. So at least we know, even if it may not necessarily make gangbusters, we at least know it's going to be a confidently produced film.
Look, if there was one, I think if you went across this panel, there's one guy that we never expect to fail, and that would be James Cameron, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
But then at that point, you kind of worry that eventually he's kind of due that bomb. And so that's what makes me worry about like 2, 3, and 4 is like, is this going to be the time when he gets the bomb? Is this going to be it?
True, but then again, this is a guy who started out working under Roger Corman, so maybe he already paid his dues of working on like
Probably,
that stuff, so.
but like that's kind of my issue with Avatar 2. It's just like, oh, he's kind of due one. Do we really want to do that? That's like my apprehension with it. That's why I still haven't seen the first Avatar. It's just like, I don't know. If Avatar 1 is so good and then Avatar 2 is so horrible, I mean...
Well, I will say this. A lot of the novelty of Avatar really comes from the theatrical experience, so you're probably not going to really get what most people got with Avatar if you're watching it in your home. And so you may have tempered expectations if you're watching it on streaming, because a lot of the major draw was the fact of, oh, it was the first major 3D film that actually made 3D work for once. And that's the other thing, is that, for all we know, James Cameron could drop a random innovation that once again changes the landscape of film as we know it, because that seems to be a thing he does. I mean, insert the South Park joke here.
All right, and then my number 1 movie is another pleasant surprise. And I wanted to give it this because here's the thing. I like being able to have the full-on movie experience. And by that, I mean, I like having the roller coaster. Contrary to what a lot of people might think, and Alex has gone to enough movies with me to kind of know when a movie, at least I would think you would know when I'm thinking a movie's good or when it's going to be bad. Because like the movie experience kind of tells me everything. And look, I liked Endgame just as much as anybody else, but a lot of what was going to happen in Endgame, I kind of already suspected. So I wasn't really at the edge of my seat for a lot of those reveals because I'm like, I know what's going to happen. Rise of Skywalker, same thing. Is like, I knew that they had to fix stuff from The Last Jedi. I knew that this had to be epic. And so I didn't really have that edge of your seat movie experience. But there was one movie that gave me that. And actually, I was able to go and see it with a good friend on this panel. And so my number 1 movie is Dragon Ball Super Broly. Because I cannot think of a movie in a theater that gave me a full-on edge-of-your-seat experience than Dragon Ball Super Broly. It was that great a film to me. That was like, here's the thing. I've watched a lot of the Dragon Ball movies, and I laugh at them because they're bad in a lot of cases. But they're popcorn bad. Like, you can enjoy how bad that they're going to be. But since Battle of Gods, which I didn't see in the theaters, I have not seen a Dragon Ball movie that has gotten me so invested in the franchise. For crying out loud, like you mentioned a couple of podcasts ago, Romney, that you were still humming Devil Trigger from Devil May Cry 5. I'm still humming Blizzard from Dragon Ball Super Broly. I have been all year. I love that song from Dragon Ball Super Broly's soundtrack. It's just amazing, and it's the point kind of setting up the events of Broly, and it does it so well. And one of the things that has just been really sad to me this year is all of the controversy that has overshadowed this amazing movie. This movie, like, there's a reason that it is the highest grossing anime movie ever to hit in the States. Because it's not just because it's Dragon Ball. Like, I know that Alex is probably going to be like, well, it's Dragon Ball, I was going to do that. But to me, it earned it. It earned it by going in new directions that hadn't been conceived of before. It got rid of the weird CG fighters that was done in Resurrection F and found worthwhile ways to add in CG to an anime cutscene. The animation was amazing. The shots were incredible. The redesign of the character Broly is far above what I expected. This is Akira Toriyama, in my opinion, at his finest. He took a character that had nothing going for him. In fact, he was laughable. And he invested an entire regime of his fans into what is going to happen next for this character, to me. And so at that point, I have to give it to this. And it just makes me sad at all of the controversy that's happened despite it, is that it's been overshadowed by all of that. And I'm going to find a way to be able to give true love to that movie in some way, shape, or form this year, because it deserves it. It was that good. That being said, I know a lot of people have asked if I'll bring this out to you too, Romney. Are you going to go out of your way to go and get the apparently they're going to re-release Broly with the Johnny Young Bosch cut, where they basically had him go in and do Broly's lines from the movie. I have it, and I'm going to stick with the Vic cut, because I do love given how much time Vic devoted to Broly and how much he wrecked his body trying to do that character. Broly is such a pleasant surprise that I have no problem giving at least the movie to him, and then the series can be Johnny Young Bosch. I don't care. Nothing against Johnny. I'm going to keep my Vic cut. Is the way that goes.
Well, for me, I'm still kind of torn because I haven't bought a copy of Broly for my home release yet, because there's been the issue of the green tint that people have been pointing out that's present in the US home video release of Broly.
Yeah, I lucked out. I don't have it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why I've been reluctant. I'm worried, like, what if the one copy I happen to buy happens to have the green tint?
Yeah, and I bought it from Amazon, so I don't know what those guys were doing, but like I apparently lucked out and I didn't get one with green tint. So I don't know what happened.
Yeah, and so that's my concern. Maybe it was just a first run issue, maybe, but that's been the thing that's held me back from buying it, because I want to. But I'm also kind of on the fence of, well, there is like the controversy involved, and I mean, if
that's the saddest part about this whole thing, is like people are debating whether or not to buy the DVD because of the controversy surrounding it. And I'm sorry, but the controversy, it sucks, but it's surrounding a really awesome movie.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm a bit on the fence about it. I mean, if maybe the new Johnny Young Bosch cut, if they decide to actually release it, because given how expensive it is to redub stuff and re-release it and stuff like that, if it has like newer features that the initial home video release of Broly didn't include, like there's got to be more than just, oh, it's a redub version. I mean, if Funimation wants me to plunk down the money, there's got to be more to it than just it being a redub. I mean, especially considering the kerfuffle they have with the 30th anniversary.
I mean,
Blu-ray
if they added a bunch of stuff that they took out from Vic into that, I would buy it. That would be enough justification to me, but because they took them out of the other Broly DVD, which still doesn't make sense to this day, aside from the issues that Funimation has with him and the lawsuit. But if you added that in, I would justify it. But here's the thing: is like, I have to give that prop to Vic. He played ball for those other Broly movies. He wrecked himself to be able to do it, and they gave him a character that was more what he wanted. And he plays it beautifully. Like you and me, when we walked out of the theater, when we saw it, we were both pleasantly surprised with how Vic performed this new character with Broly, like a Broly with actual character. And so at that point, like I just can't not give him that nod for the movie, at least, because Johnny's going to continue on with the series.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I'm at, because Funimation has been hit or miss with their home video releases with Dragon Ball lately. Again, there was the whole issue with the 30th anniversary limited edition Blu-ray that they keep talking about, and people are wondering, is it going to be the high quality, like level set quality of the remaster, or is it the crappy orange brick remaster that you've been giving us for the past decades? And that's why I've been kind of reluctant to give Funimation money in any regard. It's a case of, okay, until you guys straighten this crap out, I'm going to just keep my money here until things either blow up and it goes back to Toei, or you guys actually come to some sort of a deal that is a better indication of what we are getting, because things have been kind of blowing up in their faces in the Dragonverse in a lot of ways.
And here's the thing that makes me at least a little bit optimistic, is that where Funimation couldn't avoid a lot of that stuff, now they're technically absorbed into Sony, and Sony's not, like, if they release, because I don't think the Johnny Young Bosch cut has been released yet, they are going to want to avoid a lot of that. And so at that point, you probably are going to get some apologies and appeasing from Sony so that they can get this thing to sell because they need it to sell.
Yeah, most I can probably see Sony doing in that regard then is that they'll probably try to... Here's the way I would see them doing it, is that maybe they'll do like a TV showing like on like Adult Swim saying, oh, hey, to announce this new release, here's the new version airing on Adult Swim, or doing like, oh, watch this new version on Funimation now. Like, I can see Sony doing something in that regard. It's not just Super Broly that they're fielding controversy.
Well, and here's the other point that I'm kind of getting to with it, and Alex will probably agree with us as well. Is here's another major difference: is Funimation could do what they wanted because Japan, unless you flagrantly violated a contract, Toei wasn't going to be doing anything major with Funimation. They didn't care. But now that Sony of Japan, which it is still Sony of Japan running things, and they can actually drive down and complain, well, they're going to complain. Like that now it's actually going to be in their backyard. And so we are probably going to see Toei step in and go, hey, Sony, you got to fix a lot of the stuff that Funimation did.
Well, yeah, and the other issue is that we're running into is that it's now at the point where Funimation is now on some of the planning committees for a number of the anime that is coming out now. That's why, in spite of the divorce that was Funimation and Crunchyroll, they're both still collaborating and putting out the Ace Attorney anime, because both Crunchyroll and both Elation and Sony are still on the production committees for the Ace Attorney anime, and Capcom is also involved, thinking, okay, you guys set out to do this dual language, like, subtitle and, like, names thing. This is what we do in the games. You gotta keep that consistent, or else we're not gonna do it. And so, that's another factor that Funimation's having to deal with, is that what they're doing with Dragon Ball could affect other anime distribution deals. If they end up pissing off Toei with how they're handling Dragon Ball, Toei could just easily go, okay, you ruined with Dragon Ball. Okay, we're taking back One Piece. We're taking back this. We're taking back this. We're taking back this. We're taking back this. Like, basically, if Toei literally decided to cut all ties with Funimation, Funimation would go bankrupt, because Toei produces a bunch of series.
And the bottom line is that, and I know a lot of people don't like it when I say this, but I'm kind of happy there isn't a Texas office anymore, because the bottom line is that was kind of one of the reasons Toei wouldn't get involved. Now that they're part of Sony, Toei's going to get involved. Toei's going to get pissed.
Yeah, and it's not
if they do something bad, and they are going to go visit them personally.
Yeah, and it's not just Toei either, because in addition to Toei, you're also having to deal with Shueisha, which many people think, if they cut ties with.
Oh yeah, and you guys think Toei's bad? Like, I still am hearing new horror stories about Shueisha.
Well, yeah, and plus, to kind of explain the hypothetical, many people think, if they cut ties with Toei, they'll lose a bunch of these stuff, but then stuff like My Hero Academia is animated by Toho, not Toei. Yeah, but My Hero Academia is owned by Shueisha, which owns Shonen Jump. Meaning that if they piss off Shueisha, they wouldn't just...
Look at it this way. With them stepping on Funimation, that's one toe. With Shueisha, it's all five toes. With a big old military steel-toed boot.
Oh no, it's not just toes. Like, basically, if they piss off Shueisha, it's a titan stepping on a whole person, stepping on a whole building. That's what you're gonna deal with if you piss off Shueisha.
And here's the thing. Toei has patience. I'm thoroughly convinced, given the horror stories I've heard, Shueisha has none. So, at that point, I would dare say that if the actors get bad, and like, whatever side that they're on, if controversy gets bad enough and Shueisha gets wind of it, they might get involved. Toei might just kind of sit there and go, well, it's America, and we'll deal with it that way. Shueisha, not so much. They might actually get involved.
Yeah, and that's because of the way copyright works in Japan, where here in the US, if a creator writes a series of books or comics, and then they sell the movie rights, it's very much, okay, they sell the movie rights, the studio can do what they want, there's not much they can do, whereas in Japan, what the creator of the series says goes, meaning for anything Dragon Ball related, it all has to be run by Toriyama. Anything My Hero Academia related, it has to be run by Horikoshi. Anything One Piece related, it all has to go through Oda for his approval, because the creator of the series has final say. That's why when they wanted to do a new Shaman King series, Hiroyuki Takei said no when they told him that they couldn't bring back any of the people who worked on the first anime, and that's because Takei has that control over Shaman King. And so, if they piss off Shueisha, unless Toriyama decides to say, like, okay, well, let's show them some mercy, let's not, like, be drastic. But if they pitch off Shueisha and then they convince either Toriyama or any of the mangaka who produce the series that they are licensing to Funimation, and they decide, yeah, let's yank it away from them, they're screwed. There's nothing they can do because that's how the licensing works in Japan.
Yeah. Or, like I said, Shueisha is more, and there's actually one other thing I want to point out before we kind of wrap things up tonight, because we actually want to get into what's coming in 2020 and kind of give our thoughts on it.
And we still need to do the worst movies, too.
Yeah, we still need to do the worst movies as well. So at that point, just kind of wrap things up. Like, again, if Shueisha gets involved in U.S. shores because they get sick and tired of all, because here's the thing, Shueisha can visit Sony and give them problems. And so if they don't particularly like what a specific actor is saying, they can strongly influence the recasting of said actor. They can literally just say, no, we don't really like them, and we own this thing. So the bottom line is that, and I would not be surprised if Shueisha kind of pokes Toriyama endlessly and says, you need to get involved, you need to get involved, you need to get involved, because this is your product. And then at that point, you might actually see, if people aren't willing to play ball, like, you're going to see some recastings. You're going to see reassignments into the Dragon Ball franchise versus other things. I just don't think people realize how bad things are now that Shueisha can potentially get involved. On the bright side, though, I will say this at least about the Sony Funimation merger. People might remember I did not like the Funimation Now app. It had issues, and that was actually kind of sad because I was getting it right as soon as my second daughter was being born, and I was looking forward to watching a lot of old anime. And over the holidays, Alex was gracious enough, because he really wants us, me and my wife, to watch the new Fruits Basket, to give us a year of Funimation Now, which I was negligent about until I had seen not in the Funimation Now forums, but in like a Reddit thread, that Sony apparently had an order done to have Funimation work on their Now app and fix some of the errors that a lot of people were encountering that were similar to mine. And I'm actually very happy to say, Alex, that Funimation Now not only works better than it did when we first had it, it works even better than that.
That's great.
Yeah, so at that point, like, if there's one positive that I can claim out of the Sony merging into Funimation, it at least is that, like, their app works. And it's well worth the money as far as I'm concerned at this point, because it in my opinion, works better than, I would dare say, Disney Plus on some days. So...
yeah, it's definitely a good thing that Disney didn't buy Funimation, because that was something that was on the table a few years back. Yeah. I'm actually kind of like, I know I joked about it before. I'm kind of happy that the Ghibli's working with HBO, because at that point, at least, we might get better treatment there. Well, yeah, but it's mainly because G Kids has the deal with HBO, so it's kind of the 6 degrees where G Kids is working with Ghibli, and then basically G Kids like, oh, HBO wants to work with us. Okay, we'll partner with them instead of adding to the ever-growing media monopoly that is the House of Mouse.
So with the worst movies of 2019, I'm going to take the first one, because there was a movie that just pissed me the hell off this year, and I have to make it my worst, and that is Hellboy 2019.
Yes, that is the one that is my worst too, Hellboy.
So let me just tell you how bad this movie is, because I'm a lover. I haven't read every single comic, but I love the comics that I have read of Hellboy. I love the animated shorts that they did. I love the 2004 Hellboy. I'm even one of those weird people that likes the sequel, The Golden Army. I like all of that stuff. Ron Perlman is an amazing Hellboy. And when I picked up Hellboy 2019, like, I saw all the bad reviews, and I'm like, it can't be that bad. Oh God, it's so bad.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do after the 2004 Hellboy? You're gonna take all the happy-go-lucky stuff, and you're gonna make Hellboy a gritty reboot with a gritty, traumatized Hellboy, and it is more violent than Mortal Kombat 11 fatalities. No, I'm not kidding. That movie, like, I think you and I can concede this, Romney. That movie was gory as fuck.
Well, the gore was the least of the problems. They basically made Hellboy into a whiny teenager.
Oh, he's a bitch. In that, I have no problem saying that. He's a whiny bitch. Like, Ron Perlman versus this new guy, no comparison. Ron Perlman.
Which, I mean, I feel bad because I can tell the new guy is trying,
yeah,
but it's a case you can tell the people writing this film had no idea what they were doing, especially given that it's literally a retread of the 2004 movie with a different villain. Literally the same beats, the same, oh, is he going to destroy the world? No, remember who you are. The same exact story. I mean, my God, they should have, you could have, I mean, Hellboy as a teenager, if you really want to tell that part of his life, there's potential there, but literally retreading the same exact questions and moral dilemmas we
except that, no, I'm actually going to say not the same because they did it worse.
Yeah, they did it worse.
They did it worse. And I'm not saying that because, well, it didn't have John Hurt. No, they just did it worse. They actually make me not invested in backstory. They made me not invested in the origin. It's like one of those first superhero movies I could say that. Like, don't go backward. Please don't go back into a flashback. Please don't. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just show me Hellboy drunk again. And the other thing, too, I actually want to ask you this, Romney, because you and me both saw it, is did you forget at one point that Mila Jovovich was supposed to be like a vampire kind of character?
Honestly, I don't even really remember her character, so I think that answers that question.
I did. So like I remembered at the beginning, I'm like, okay, so kind of like a vampire character. This is gonna be kind of fun. And then they had so many times where they were assembling her various parts, and it's just like, what are you again?
I mean, I got some.
Are you a succubus? I can't remember anymore.
I mean, I just saw it as basically like, oh, so you saw Vin Diesel do this in The Last Witch Hunter and thought you could basically copy the
Yes!
same playbook. I mean,
God
and
damn it.
as many problems as I had with The Last Witch Hunter.
I don't mean to curse so much, but this was bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like the film basically feels like it's a ripoff of itself. That's the thing. It's like they
Yes.
tried to rip off the 2004 films by Guillermo del Toro, and then also tried ripping off all the other subpar urban fantasy movies like The Last Witch Hunter that came out since then. And looking at this, I'm just like, okay, the people working on this clearly don't understand what made Hellboy work. And I mean, if the actor...
And here's a perfect example. If you guys don't know how bad it is, okay, Alex can kind of attest this for me. Andrea is very appeasing when it comes to movies. She wants to be entertained, right, Alex?
That's right.
She fell asleep halfway in the movie.
Whoa. Wow.
Granted, she'd had a hard weekend that weekend, but here's the thing. She's had hard weekends like that before, and if it's a good enough movie, like, she stayed up for Venom because she was still invested in what they were doing. But she fell asleep halfway into Hellboy.
Wow.
And the other movies kept her awake.
Did you guys watch it at home or at the theater?
I saw it in the theater.
I'm so glad I paid $2 for this.
I saw it in the theater and I paid $4 for it because, again, T-Mobile Tuesdays. But even at that price,
Yeah,
I just looked.
If you paid full price, I am so sorry.
Yeah, if I paid full price, I would have been pissed.
Yeah, absolutely pissed. I would have probably demanded a refund at that point. Like it's a horrible movie. But that is my pick, is Hellboy 2019, and fuck the guy who made that. I will find his name and I'm going to put his name on a blacklist. If he gets directing jobs and any other things, I'm immediately going to be worried because of the way he did Hellboy.
Well, I try to be
Romney.
I try to be a bit more forgiving because some directors are better at telling original stories as opposed to adaptation. So
Yeah,
it's a case where maybe this was just a case. I'm going to look. I actually have the IMDb up. The director is Neil Marshall. Looking at what else he's done.
I'm not writing him off permanently, but I'm definitely going to look at what he's doing in trailers, and I'm going to be wondering if he's doing the exact same thing again.
Yeah, looking at this, most of his credits have him as an executive producer. Oh wait, I forgot that IMDb staggers it. Oh boy, oh boy.
Who is it?
Well, if you're looking forward to the sequel to Kong Skull Island,
Oh, good lord!
he's rumored.
Oh, he's
rumored.
Oh wait, no. That's 2004.
Well, I'm just saying because there's a sequel that's been announced called Skull Island: Blood of the Kong, and he's rumored to be directing. So
Neil Marshall is.
Yep. He also directed an
Okay.
episode of looks like it's mostly television, where he directed episodes of Black Sails, Game of Thrones, Constantine, Hannibal, Timeless,
Well, that
Westworld,
explains the
Lost in
gore.
Space,
Ah.
the Netflix series.
That's the new Lost in Space.
Oh, good lord. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna be watching this guy because it was a bad movie. But anyway, we're running short on time here. So Romney, your worst movie of 2019.
You already beat me to it. It's Hellboy because, again,
Sorry.
like I said, it basically feels like a bad ripoff of the other Hellboy movies, but done by people who don't understand the appeal of Hellboy. And so, looking at this, it's a case of you've already pretty much hit most of it on the head. I mean, you mentioned the gore. For me, like I mentioned, it's a blatant retread of the 2004 movie with a lot of the same beats and the whole internal conflict, crap that we already saw. And so it was just a movie nobody asked for or needed. I mean, nobody was clamoring for a reboot of Hellboy. And I mean, I understand that Ron Perlman can't do makeup anymore because he has a bad makeup allergy. That's why.
I actually was one of those few guys saying that, like, since Ron is probably the most perfect character or guy they could have gotten to play Hellboy, they should have just retired it at that point. And if you wanted to do additional Hellboy movies, just go with animated, because then he can come in and voice it.
Yeah, and even if they wanted to bring David Harbour as the new Hellboy, which again, I get the feeling that in the hands of a director more suited to handle the material,
Yeah,
he could have
if
worked.
Guillermo was doing this, then I probably wouldn't hate David Harbour that bad.
Yeah, and if not even necessarily not just Guillermo, if it was just someone who it just basically this isn't really Hellboy. This is basically an edgy teenager's interpretation of Hellboy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you gave it to
yeah.
someone like Del Toro, or even gave it to someone who just was better at more atmospheric horror films, it could have worked. And David Harbour has potential if they decide to bring him back as Hellboy. They just need to give it to someone who understands the source material better. But what we got here just didn't work. It really didn't.
But I'm not asking for a reboot right now. I like wait 5 years. Let the bad taste.
Like maybe if they want to do a follow up, maybe instead of bringing back Hellboy, just do a follow up. That's just the BPRD. Just you've got a whole other wide cast of characters. Granted,
that would actually be a really cool one. Like, it's not necessarily just Hellboy. Like, if you did stuff on the BPRD, that would be really cool.
Yeah, and I mean they already did technically tease Abe Sapien as if it was some, oh, we're gonna have Abe Sapien. Oh, and it's like, we already know who he is. The people who would see this movie already know who these people are. You don't need to
tease other people, please. There's actually a lot of really cool characters in Hellboy,
and
we don't have to have the retreads.
Yeah, and so I mean, maybe go that route of like doing the BPRD, or even just maybe just step away. Maybe look at some of Dark Horse's other titles for inspiration. But again, you've already hit most of the frustrations I had with Hellboy, and I've already summarized it, so there's no point in beating the dead horse into a pulp.
All right, and then Alex, what would you consider the worst movie of 2019?
Again, I don't think I got one. I didn't see that many movies either this year.
All right, so at that point, we could just rag on Hellboy some more. Hellboy was bad. No, I'm kidding. Actually, that's going to be perfect because we are running short on time, and we actually do want to get into, because you guys kind of suggested it, is stuff we're looking forward to in 2020. So I actually have some lists here of some of the major releases that are going to be happening both for games as well as for movies. And let's go ahead and go into games really quick on some of the major games that we know are coming out in 2020 and probably even have release dates at this point. I know one game that we have to bring up because of our audience and their love of it is Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. We actually are going to look forward to that this week, actually. Like, literally the day that this podcast is going up, that is when it's releasing, and we will be able to give our thoughts on it. I will say I'm pleasantly surprised by a lot of the most recent trailers for Kakarot. Whereas I was really worried about it before, I'm excited about getting it this time around, especially since I know that me and Romney are going to be trying it out for the first time. Where are you at, Romney?
Well, I'm definitely curious about it, since I do have to be a bit more frugal with my gaming purchases. I'm not necessarily going to get it on day one, but I am genuinely curious with how it turns out, since it basically looks like what Legacy of Goku would have looked like if it had the full backing of Shueisha, not just a small budget backing for
that's the interesting part about this, is that they're going to try again with doing like an action adventure game with Dragon Ball as opposed to just another fighting game. So that's already an interesting way to be able to go about it. So I have a feeling, Alex, you probably have nothing to say about Kakarot.
No.
Okay, so let's move on into one of the other highly anticipated ones, which is coming out March of this year. The Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's finally here. At least episode 1 of it is finally going to be here. So as far as anticipation, I will say I'm looking forward to it. I like a lot of the recent trailers that have been shown, so much so that I've just kind of shut up about my issues with it and let people have their passion, because the bottom line is you guys kind of deserve it. It is looking very, very good. As for me, I'm excited for it. What about you, Romney, or you, Alex?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to really remember my thoughts about the game.
The only complaint that I have with it right now is that it's episodic. So we know that we're going to be getting an episode 2, and a majority of this game is going to be in Midgar. So they've basically added 30 plus hours to Midgar. And I'm worried about that just because eventually Midgar's going to get boring. And I'm going to want to get out. Because I had that problem with the first game, and Midgar in that game is like 3 hours at best. So at that point, I'm worried about what they're going to put in there, but they say that they're also making a lot of major changes to the story to help things make more sense. But that's my biggest complaint, is I really just don't see why this game has to be episodic.
Yeah, for me, it's just a case, since I don't really have any nostalgia attached to Final Fantasy VII, I'm very much going to be kind of one of those wait and see sort of people, where I'm going to kind of wait until I kind of see more of the gameplay, because yeah, we've gotten trailers, but it's kind of a case until I actually see like a demo or something that gives me a better indication of what we're getting. I'm probably going to just kind of wait and see what the general consensus is.
All right. Alex, I know that you're not invested in getting it yourself, but I know that you have a lot of friends who are very excited that it's coming. So how does that kind of influence your take on it?
Not too much. I don't think I'm ever going to get into Final Fantasy, so... Yeah, don't really care
but
much
you're
about
probably
Final
excited
Fantasy
that they're
VII.
going to get what they want.
Yeah, I'm happy for them.
Yep. So the other one that we were going to bring up if Brenton was going to be able to join us, but unfortunately he could not. He had some family issues. So we're going to go ahead and skip that one. Another anticipated title is the Resident Evil 3 remake. We have to bring it up. Obviously, we love the 2 remake, and the 3 remake is looking amazing. I'm looking forward to April 3rd when this game releases. What about you guys?
I'm definitely excited for it because, again, Capcom has learned a lot from it's very much, we're getting a lot of much needed new blood, and it's kind of nice seeing that that Capcom is kind of letting Resident Evil be horror again. And so I mean, if hopefully I'll have enough money by the time it comes out, but that's definitely a game I'm going to get as close to day one as possible.
I will say this. I'm a little worried about some of the stuff that's come out of Capcom, and that is just that so as you kind of know, because I think you've played the original game, there were areas that Nemesis couldn't visit you in, specifically like save rooms. He couldn't go in there, but there were also areas like where he may be scripted to show up later. And so at that point, he would never show up randomly. They have actually confirmed that they are loosening the restrictions. He can basically show up anywhere in this
So they're
game.
going alien
I
with
mean,
him.
that's what they did with Mr. X, because
That worries me so bad, because I'm worried that I'm going to
Mr.
walk
X
into the
is
haven of a save room and all of a sudden, stars.
But then again, that is kind of what you sign up for with a Resident Evil game. And given that Mr. X gave me literal nightmares, I wouldn't surprise it. I can see them maybe staggering it a bit, depending on the difficulty, where normal mode, he can kind of enter everywhere, but if you're playing in easier mode, they ease up.
Like he won't come in save rooms or anything like that.
And I mean, especially when you consider the situations in Resident Evil 3. I haven't actually played the original, so I'm kind of, I know the story, I just haven't actually played the original, even though I have it downloaded on my PS3 and PS Vita. But it's a case where I'm excited. Yeah, it's going to make me soil myself several times and give me nightmares and make it so that I won't be able to sleep in the following weeks, but well, I wouldn't really have it any other way.
And you're going to be the one that plays on the harder difficulty, so you will experience this. I don't know if I'm like I played Resident Evil 2 a little bit on harder difficulties, but now I'm kind of going I don't know.
For me, I'm kind of a normal mode and then I'm done. I don't really try the uber hard modes. It's just I always play most games on normal mode. The only time I really step down to easy is if a game is just really, if it's like a chore or if I just want to invest in the story. But for the most part, I always play on normal mode, which in Japan, normal mode may as well be hard mode because I don't know why Japanese developers like to torture themselves, but well, then again, that's a whole separate can of worms I'm not willing to open right now.
I'm just curious, really quick, before we move into the next game. Alex, now that I've told you that they're changing some of the restrictions to Nemesis, are you happy about that? Or are you, because you have now officially, we don't have this Let's Play up, but you have experienced Nemesis in Resident Evil 3. Does this worry you, or does this make you more excited?
I don't know. It could be either or.
A little bit of both.
Yeah, because I mean, Nemesis really does, just from what I've seen so far with our playthrough, which we're working through right now, it does really remind me a lot of Alien Isolation. And the Alien is completely off the cuff in that. There's only a handful of segments in that game where the alien runs on a set script. But other than that, Nemesis and the Alien are quite a bit alike. They're going to go wherever and they're going to do whatever. And you got to try and not run into them.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing to keep in mind is like you've seen the Resident Evil 2 remake where the new Mr. X, like he is much worse than the Nemesis in the original game. They've officially they've officially given a number to this. He is 10 times worse than Mr. X.
That could be concerning though.
Yeah, really?
Well,
you think? 10 times worse? Potentially? Okay. Well, then I'm just going to have nightmares all the time. The next game that people wanted us to talk about is Cyberpunk 2077. Now, none of us are... Romney might be invested because I haven't played enough CG Projekt Red to be able to love the company. I'm even kind of up in the air as to whether or not I want to try Cyberpunk because I don't have that investment. Like, I've played some of the first Witcher, and that's about it. I don't have that investment like a lot of people do. What is you guys' take on Cyberpunk and the fact that you will be able to run the Resistance with Keanu Reeves?
Well, I don't really have the investment because I haven't played any CG product or anything. I haven't played the Witcher games. My familiarity with the Witcher is from the books, and I've only read the very first. Well, technically the first chronologically, although it wasn't the first book written and published. It is the first chronologically, and that's the basis of the Netflix series that I still need to watch. So I'm still kind of on the fence because I mean I have a copy of Witcher 3. I just haven't actually booted it up because, well, I already have 3 other 40 plus hour games that I need to actually get through.
Yeah, and that's kind of my other worry with it is like I know that the Witcher games are huge. And in order to be able to get the most out of them, you want to be able to play 50 to 60 hours in. And I don't know if I have that kind of time outside of what I'm doing in streams and all that stuff. So I don't know if I have that much investment. I might wait until I hear from other people to see whether or not it's good. So there's kind of our viewpoint on 2077. The next highlight is Marvel's Avengers. I can tell you guys personally, I am excited for this game just to be able to try it out. What we saw at the demonstration at the Square Enix panel did get me excited, considering what they're trying to do, especially with the control schemes for the various heroes. It makes me actually want to try things other than Iron Man, which is probably... Like, Iron Man's my go-to guy when it comes to anything Avengers. I always play that character, but Hulk looked fun, Cap looked fun, and they actually did say that they're going to be starting things off with 6 playable heroes: Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Thor, and the new one, where a lot of people thought it was going to be either Hawkeye or Ant-Man that was going to be the 6th character. It is now confirmed to be Kamala Khan, a.k.a. the Inhuman version of Captain Marvel.
Miss Marvel.
Yeah, she's basically wearing the old Miss Marvel garb, but she's got a different power set. In fact, from what I understand, a lot of the story is going to be told via Kamala Khan. So at that point, she's probably going to be the main character you get a lot of access to. I'm still excited, regardless. I'm not happy that it's going to be done through her. I'd much rather have a perspective via Iron Man or Cap.
Well,
but that's me.
Yeah, but at the same time, I can see why they're choosing someone like Kamala Khan, because she works as a good sort of audience proxy for someone who isn't familiar with the Avengers, and especially given that they have, again, to kind of remind people, this isn't tied to the MCU, this isn't tied to the movies, and so they're having to establish their own game universe version of the Avengers, and a character like Kamala Khan, who pretty much is pulled into the situation out of almost nowhere. She's basically the kind of character who's in the wrong place at the wrong time and gets pulled into it, and so for a story, the kind of story they're telling, it works.
Yeah, it really does. Alex, do you have any thoughts on Avengers? Like what you saw of it? Were you excited for it, or did you not like it?
I'm interested in it. I want to see a little bit more, but yes, I'm very interested in it.
Okay. So moving on into the next highlight here, and this one I think Alex is going to have some things to say about: Predator Hunting Grounds. So this is also a highly anticipated title that got announced at the Game Awards, I believe, or it was the Sony State of Play. One of the two got the announcement. Basically, it's going to be, if you've played Friday the 13th, the game, it's that on steroids, and you get to hunt down predators. So at that point, I've seen a lot of people excited for it. I'm glad that you are. I don't have a lot of that love for the Predator franchise that a lot of people do. I've seen maybe pieces of the first movie. So like I've seen the "You're a one ugly motherfucker." I've seen that stuff, but I like the character of the Predator. But I don't know if I'm that invested, especially with how Friday the 13th the game kind of turned out. Thankfully, it's not the same dev who's working on it. What about you, Alex? Are you excited for Predator Hunting Ground?
No strong opinions like you. I don't have a real strong affection to the Predator franchise like I do the Alien franchise, so maybe I'll check it out, maybe I won't. I'll see.
Okay. What about you, Romney?
I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't really have any nostalgia attached to Predator because, like, the whole Alien Predator sort of hype, that all just kind of passed me by. So I've got no real strong feelings about it. So hopefully we'll have another case like Alien Isolation where they actually create a good, decent movie tie-in game. But, well, then again, we did have the failed reboot of Predator a few years back. So things are kind of up in the air.
Yeah, pretty much. I'll be very interested to see what other people are saying about it. Because again, the problem that I have with it is that it sounds like it's running a lot like Friday the 13th the game did, and I get it's not the same developer, but people hated what was done in that game. So I'm worried that this is going to be a much more established franchise that a lot of people love, and they're going to wreck it, and that'll be really sad. The next game that we need to get into is Ghost of Tsushima. This one I am personally excited for. I kind of hope that it doesn't get delayed into the PlayStation 5. I hope that it gets PS4, some PS4 live as well. I don't know about you, Romney. I'm thoroughly on board with this particular game from Sucker Punch.
I'm definitely curious about it, but again, I'm not entirely on board just yet. I mean, I've seen some snippets of it, but again, it's very much I'm in the wait and see camp, kind of like wait until we either get more information, learn a little bit more about it, and wait to see what the other impressions about it before I decide whether or not to put the money towards it.
For me, I think I'm gonna get invested, because the bottom line is that I have actually over the last 2 years become a Sucker Punch fan. I have played the Infamous franchise, as well as this is going to be one of my first retro reviews, but I have played the first Sly Cooper game, and I can get why a lot of people love Sucker Punch and the level of love they give to their games. So that just makes me even more excited for what Ghost of Tsushima is going to be. So I'm very happy about that. Some people are going to want us to talk about Last of Us Part 2. My viewpoint is I'm going to play it, I'm going to get mad at it, and that's going to be the way it goes, because that's what happened with Last of Us. I like the gameplay, but I hate the story. I hate it. It's everything that I hate about post-apocalyptic stories. And it's supposed to be. That's the problem. Is like it's supposed to make you angry. That's kind of my issue with it. Any thoughts from you, Romney?
I haven't played the first one, so I have no horse in this race.
All right. And to wrap things up, I actually wanted to bring this up, even though it's not a highly anticipated title by too many people. But for me and Romney, it is, because it was announced at the Game Awards, Bravely Default 2. I'm very excited for this game, although I'm still weirded out on how it's not 3, because Second Lair to me is 2, but that's me. I kind of hope still that we get an announcement from a Nintendo Direct that Bravely Default gets moved up to the Switch. That would be another awesome decision, in my opinion. Or if you wanted to do Second Lair as well and just merge them into one game, I'd be on board with that too. But I am excited for this game. What about you, Romney?
Well, I'm definitely curious, because I do want to see what they plan to do with the story. I still need to play through Bravely Second in order to really fully understand what's going on.
I still need to finish Bravely 1, man. I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
So I haven't even played Second Lair yet.
Yeah.
And I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It's that's the level of time I have to work with.
Yeah, and especially just I mean, it looks like they may just be starting over in the sense of, okay, they may copy what Final Fantasy does, where it's like, okay, it's just in the same world, new cast of characters, especially considering what happened in the events. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail because that will spoil the game for you since you're trying to go through it, and
Please
it's
don't. Yeah.
best to see the reveals before. It's best to go in blind when it comes to some of the major plot reveals. But with the way things play out in Bravely Default in the end game, I mean, there are definitely directions they can take the story, but it's a case of I'm gonna wait until we actually hear more about what story they are planning to telling. Like, who's gonna be the main party? Are we going to be seeing any of the major characters returning, or are they doing kind of a Final Fantasy for the after years where it's like or like a Golden Sun Dark Dawn where it's like the kids of the previous
That would be
cast?
cool.
Well, could be, but then again, Final Fantasy for the after years had its problems.
It did, but I still like the idea of revisiting some characters. But that's me.
Well, yeah.
I didn't mind that concept.
Again, when you get to the ending of Bravely Default, your tune might change a little bit.
I will say this, one thing that might have to happen, I've already been advertising this on other videos, but we're also looking to do what I'm calling Geek News Game Talk, where we're basically going to be able to have like a roundtable and be able to discuss the games as a whole and be able to do some spoilers and stuff like that. That might be one of the games I pitch for, is you and me do one on Bravely Default. And just kind of go into the story of it when I finish the game, and then at that point we can go into Second Lair as well. As long as you're up for it, Ron.
I'm definitely up for it.
But
I just need to actually finish Bravely Second, because Bravely Default I've beaten to death in the sense that I literally maxed out all the jobs, got the max levels, and did all the side stuff. Because there are certain parts of the game that you can literally exploit for experience, and I exploited the hell out of it.
Yeah, I'll admit I have to. So those are the highly anticipated games of 2020. I want to get into the movies now, and this is actually an interesting story that I found from IGN, where they predicted like up and coming hot movies that are going to be coming out this year, but they also predicted what are going to be the top box office domestically for 2020. And it would actually be cool, like at the end of the year, to maybe revisit this and see whether or not that actually happened. I'm not going to mention all of them because there's a lot of movies that we don't necessarily care about, but I will mention their placing, and also some that didn't make the list. The number one is Wonder Woman 1984. I think that's going to be a hard one to top in 2020. I just barely saw the new trailer for it. I'm excited. I think that they're going a really cool direction with Wonder Woman 1984, and I'm very much looking forward to it. What about you guys?
I'm definitely curious. At least it looks like they are at least continuing the momentum they got from the first one, where they're actually having faith in their own story and not trying to pigeonhole Wonder Woman into the grim, gritty, we're going to try to rip off Watchmen, except not really sort of template that Snyder gave us. But it's definitely going to be an interesting period, because given that DC's kind of abandoned the whole cinematic universe idea, I'm definitely curious what they're going to do with Wonder Woman.
See, they say they've abandoned it, but then they also kind of give these hints that like maybe you'll see Aquaman in these, and so at that point, I don't know if they have or not. I think they're still experimenting.
They are, but they've made it clear that
they definitely abandoned the whole Justice League idea.
Yeah, they basically gave up on
they
gave up on trying to copy the Marvel formula because they realized that it didn't work. And again, considering that the CEO behind it, Kevin Tsujihara, got ousted and replaced, the CEO that's replaced Tsujihara has made it clear, hey, we realize we tried to rush it. We need to take our time with these things. Because although they say like, oh yeah, we may have like Aquaman appear in Wonder Woman 1984, but then they also release stuff like Joker, where they establish, okay, this is completely separate. This is just its own standalone thing that isn't going to connect to these other movies. And so Warner Brothers is kind of in an interesting place with their DC properties, because in addition to Wonder Woman, we've got Birds of Prey coming out. It's basically, it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to keep and what they decide to move forward with in this new era for the DC extended universe.
Exactly. Alex, any thoughts on Wonder Woman?
I'm excited for it. I saw the trailer. It looks great.
It looks good, doesn't it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So the number two here, I want to give a nod to, because it is a long-standing sci-fi franchise, but I don't think any of us on the panel are fans. And that is Dune. I actually didn't know this was happening, which is kind of surprising to me because my family loves Dune.
Well, it's because this film's been stuck in development hell for years.
Yeah.
I mean, especially after it kind of started in the wake of the prequel trilogy for Star Wars kind of reigniting an interest in science fiction. And then, of course, you had stuff like Avatar kind of showing up, oh, hey, people really like this sci fi sort of thing. And honestly,
That would be my guess.
and
Yeah.
honestly, given how David Lynch handled the property, it's I mean, many people think, "Oh, but the David Lynch version, like, it's not gonna be hard to top the David Lynch version because David Lynch, by his own admission, admitted he didn't even want to do Dune." And so it's a case of where maybe we'll actually get a decent adaptation of the property, or we could end
I'm hoping.
or we could end up with
Yeah.
another disaster. I mean,
Well, I mean, here's the way that I'm kind of looking at it. I haven't seen a trailer for this, but my family loves Dune. It's specifically my older brother and my older sister. They love Dune. And so at that, and not that's, I don't think that they have a love for the movie, but when Sci-Fi did a series for Dune, they loved that. And so at that point, that's kind of my investment. I want to go and see it just to see what they saw in Dune. And so at that point, like that's why I'm going to go see the movie. But I don't think any of us really have an investment in this movie, do we?
I mean, I'm genuinely curious since Dune is kind of considered to be the Lord of the Rings equivalent for science fiction. And I'm actually looking up who we've got directing since we've got actors cast. It looks like it's actually in post-production and is expected to come out in December. Who we've got directing, it's the director behind Blade Runner 2049 who directed this. So it's a case of, okay, I mean, I didn't see Blade Runner
Maybe.
2049. He seems to have a lot of sci-fi credits under his name, so maybe we'll
Maybe see 2049 before that and see whether or not he did a good job.
maybe. I just 2049 did not appeal to me because it's a case of, oh, it feels like an unnecessary sequel to a movie that nobody asked for, because that's a thing we're getting, especially looking at the slate that's listed on IMDb of upcoming films for 2020. But it's a case where, well, I'm definitely curious. I'm going to really withhold from making any sort of statement until we actually start seeing trailers.
Yep. Alex, anything you want to add with this one?
I don't know about Dune. It feels like one of those stories that would not appeal to me in the sci-fi camp.
But the spice must flow, Alex.
I'm
It's
sure
like
it
the
must.
only joke I know from that movie is the
I
spice
know.
must flow.
Yeah, that's the other thing with adapting something like Dune. It is very much a sprawling sort of epic that you have a lot of ground you have to cover. But then again, people said the same thing about Lord of the Rings. So who
Yeah,
knows? Maybe it'll
it's true.
work.
So I'm going to skip a couple of these just because I don't think we have really any vested interest in them. But the number 5 on this list is Black Widow. That is another movie that I've just barely seen a trailer for, and I'm looking forward to it. I think that they are doing enough differently with the formula here that it's gotten me interested. Whereas before, I like ScarJo as Black Widow, so I probably would have seen it just because in honor of the character. But now I actually have like a vested interest in it. Romney, Alex, anything to add there?
Well,
I'm interested in Black Widow.
I'm moderately curious. I mean, although Endgame and Far From Home brought me back into the Marvel hype for a little bit, has since kind of died down, especially now that Disney's throwing all their eggs in the Disney Plus basket. So I may check it out, but I don't feel it, given that I just don't have as much of an attachment to the character to the degree that other people do. It's kind of one of those, that's kind of how I approach the Marvel movies, where I only really watch the ones that have the characters I actually care about. And Black Widow, I'm just not as interested in the character, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's number 5. Number 7 is The Eternals. And this movie I'm worried about. Again, kind of because we mentioned this earlier, this is going to be the movie that introduces the X-Men into the MCU. And I don't know if I want the X-Men introduced into the MCU. I don't know enough about the characters of the Eternals to have an investment. But I'm worried about the film. I'll just at least say that. Anything you guys want to add on that?
Yeah, there's a lot that's kind of up in the air, and I'm with you. I don't know too much about the characters to really know how I feel about it. I just know about the X-Men tie-in because that was something that was that was kind of addressed to the press, saying, "Okay, this will be the film that will kind of, sort of, maybe explain where the X-Men have been this whole time." It's just again and again, I'm with you. Given that the X-Men are kind of the big contradiction in the Marvel universe at large in the comics, I'm really worried how Disney is going to handle them. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
there are some characters that would work well. I mean, I can definitely see I can definitely see how Cyclops could fit in. I can see how like Jean Grey and stuff like that. But when they start getting to characters like Wolverine and even how they're gonna work in characters like Deadpool, it's a case of
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, some.
I don't know if I want Deadpool in the MCU. I really don't know if I want it.
I mean, I know we're still at least getting Ryan Reynolds still attached to it, and that's really what's giving me hope. But when you have characters like Wolverine, ones that have a grittier edge than what Disney usually allows for, I mean, as
I would even say Deadpool kind of fits that because given the 2 movies that we have of Deadpool, that's why I don't want them invested in the MCU. I want him to still do the formula that they're doing right now and make fun of the MCU.
yeah.
Because of it.
Plus, it's also just a case where, considering again, after Logan, it's going to be really hard to try to reestablish the character. I mean, and I know Hugh Jackman's made it clear that he's done. So whoever they cast, there's gonna be that huge glaring shadow hanging over their heads.
I can't think of anybody who could do it.
Yeah, and so
granted, I didn't think of Hugh Jackman back in the day, but like Wolverine is a hard cast.
well, yeah, and especially given that Wolverine raises a number of other problems in the MCU at large as well. So if they were to do it, I would maybe hold off on introducing Wolverine until a good 5 or 6 years down the line after you've reestablished the X-Men and given enough of a basis there. Because again, given what we're going to see with Black Widow, the presence of James Howlett, aka Logan, aka Wolverine, is going to raise a lot more questions. Because again, Logan has encountered Natasha a number of times, like to the point that under some writers, it's explained that he was the one who trained Black Widow in some of her fighting styles way back when. But then if you try to introduce Wolverine later on, it's going to be like, okay, if he's supposed to have fought in a lot of these world wars, how did he not get on the Avengers' radar ahead of time?
Yeah, no kidding. So the next one is actually number 8 on the list, and I think this is another one that's highly anticipated by all 3 of us, is the live-action Mulan. So I don't know. Did either of you guys go and see the live-action Aladdin or Lion King?
Nope.
Okay, I didn't either, and the last one that I went and saw was the live-action Beauty and the Beast, which I tended to like, but after seeing the most recent trailer of Mulan, I'm actually way more excited for it. Mainly because it kind of looks like they're going the Crouching Tiger angle, and the main the actress that they've got playing Mulan does a great job in the trailers. So I'm at least invested into this movie. I'm not sure if I'll see it in theaters. What about you guys?
I'm definitely curious about Mulan, primarily because, and here's something, and I've had this discussion with so many people who are really nostalgia blinded because of their love of the animated film, where they're like, oh, but there's no Mushu, there's no musical numbers. But what people forget is that Hua Mulan was a real person. She was an actual historical figure, and the actual stories of her exploits are infinitely more interesting than what Disney gave us. Disney didn't even scratch the surface. The comparison I gave is, and people's like, oh, but they're tailing it for Chinese audiences. And that would be like if a studio in China made a movie about Davy Crockett and then decided to give him a talking raccoon sidekick with the voice of John Mulaney. It wouldn't work.
Well, and this is actually one of those few times where I agree with Disney's statement. Just because we're bringing something back doesn't mean we have to do it in the same musical style fashion that we've done in the past. And this is one of those examples where I would agree with that. I don't think you have to go that end. In fact, in a lot of cases, and I've seen a lot of compelling arguments that as much as I love, like, I'll Make a Man Out of You and some of the tracks in there, they hurt the movie, and it's because of the fact that they were trying to stick to the Disney formula, and this movie didn't really want to fit in the Disney formula. It was like trying to put a square peg or trying to put a square peg into kind of like a triangle hole. It just kind of didn't work. So that's kind of my viewpoint on it. Alex, are you excited for the new Mulan movie?
You know, I keep wrestling back and forth of whether or not I want to see it. I saw the trailer, and the trailer has me interested and certainly intrigued. I like the fact that they are going to actually push this one a lot more differently compared to their other remakes, which have just been like verbatim. They're basically the original animated movies, but now they're live action or photorealistic CGI in the case of The Lion King. But, you know, I'm still kind of weary about the whole idea of Disney just going back and remaking their entire animated library for the lulls of it, you know, instead of trying to go forward with new stuff, especially as they continue to become the giant media conglomerate that owns every goddamn thing in the world. So, I don't know. I guess I'm still kind of on the fence about it because, again, it does look intriguing and it does look good. And I get it. It's going to probably be more based towards the original Chinese stories of Mulan and not too much the original Disney animated film. That's fine. Again, I kind of like that they're trying to at least do something differently with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So moving on into the next one, I'm going to kind of rush things because we are a little over time. But the next one that we have would actually be number 12 on the list. Technically, number 10 is Uncharted, but as we are going to report in our first week back, Uncharted's fallen into some trouble. And so at that point, I'm not sure if it's going to be coming out this year or not. But number 12 on here is Top Gun Maverick.
Well,
because of course it is.
I've got no nostalgia with Top Gun, so again,
the sad reality that I have to admit here, guys, is that I don't know if it should happen, but it's going to do well. I think it's going to get some money just because of the nostalgia of Top Gun. And I don't know if it deserves that or not, because I saw the trailer and I went, I don't know. I don't even think you're doing what made the original Top Gun enjoyable. You're kind of darkening it, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't think that this is going to work out as well as a lot of people think it is. What about you, Alex?
You know, I'm actually intrigued by the Top Gun sequel. I want to see it, you know? I think it looks good, and you know, it'll definitely be different because this has been in development a long time as well. This is something Tony Scott had been working on before his death, and I guess I just want to see what else they'll do with it. I like the kind of direction they're going. I know, I'm not quite sure what this movie is totally going for. I get it. I kind of get a general vibe, but I know like one of the concepts that was floating around, like, and that does appear to be what's going on in this movie, is sort of like, you know, the old guard, the old Maverick is getting replaced because of technology and that. And I know early on it was about like drone warfare. It looks like this is about advanced combat jets. So, but I'm very, very interested. I want to see it.
Okay. So the number 14 on this list, and this one I have a feeling that me and Romney are going to have some involvement, is Ghostbusters Afterlife. I still have not seen a trailer yet, but enough people have been screaming in my inbox that if it's possible, please do a movie review with you and Romney on Ghostbusters Afterlife. So at that point, I don't know, Romney, this might actually have to happen.
Well, I mean, I've seen the trailer because I saw it on Instagram because they've been promoting that like crazy. And honestly, it looks like they're actually trying. But again, I'm cautious here. I'm just thinking, okay, are we actually getting what feels like a faithful, respectful addition to the franchise? Or are we getting a repeat of the 2016, except instead of the all-female cast, it's like, oh, it's Ghostbusters meets Stranger Things, which means even more and more blatant nostalgia teasing. And so it looks like there's at least a story here I can get into, but I'm going to be cautious. It's a case of I've been tricked before. Because people forget, I wanted to like the 2016 Ghostbusters. I came in hoping it would be good.
So did I.
And so, again, fool me once, shame on me.
Yeah. Alex, anything you want to add to Afterlife?
I haven't seen a trailer. I'm still kind of skeptical about it. Just, I think you're about 30 years too late to make a Ghostbusters 3. We had a Ghostbusters 3. It was the video game. Mm-hmm. I think that's as good as we're going to get.
I'm so glad you say that because it's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the next movie on the list would be number 18 on it, and that is Morbius. We have talked about this before. The Michael Morbius movie is coming out this year, and I just barely saw the trailer for it. It's got a lot of potential.
Well,
I'm excited for Morbius.
I haven't seen the trailers yet, and for those of you not knowing, this is meant to be a movie based on the Spider-Man villain, in case we haven't made that clear.
Yeah, the Spider-Man villain, Michael Morbius, and it's Jared Leto playing it.
Yeah, so
that's this might be his superhero redemption from the Suicide Squad Joker.
Maybe, but again, it's one of those, I have that same sort of cautiousness, because this is, and again, people think, oh, it ties to the MCU. No, this is Sony's separate Spider-Verse. So this is basically, if it's in the same universe, it would be in the same universe of Venom, not necessarily the Spider-Man movies. And so it's kind of one of those cases where I mean,
Which, speaking of, Venom 2 is also due this year as well.
yeah, and I haven't seen the first Venom because I heard a lot of mixed.
It's weird.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. But it's
like there's stuff that I like about it, but it's I can't call it bad. It's just weird.
Yeah, and I just look at this, and so I'm still reluctant. I'll wait until I see the full trailers, like when it gets closer to the release, when we actually start seeing more of an indication, since I know that they're still very much in the early parts of the post-production. So it's one of those cases where I'm gonna wait until we learn a little bit more about it, learn a bit more about what they're hoping to do here with these movies based on the various villains of the Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. Because again, I look at this and I'm just like, okay, I get it. You're trying to do your own cinematic universe, trying to focus on different villains, but that's
like the weirdest part of this whole thing is that the Spider-Verse is going to get set up by his villains. Not by Spider-Man himself, but by his villains.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, where's really the story? I mean, I understand the origin of Morbius. You've at least got a story you can tell, which can work. But then you've got other villains where it may be a bit tricky, like Kraven, for example, and then you also have cases where villains are tied up in the MCU, like Vulture and Mysterio, and
can't do them.
And then Doc Ock. Doc Ock's origin is tied heavily to Spider-Man. It's not like one of those, oh, we can do an origin story for Doc Ock. Like, no, I mean, we already had one with...
Which, from what I hear, a Doc Ock script has been pitched numerous times, but they've all been turned down.
And it's also the same case with Scorpion. Scorpion is another villain who is tied heavily to Spider-Man as a character, that you can't do a solo origin of Scorpion. That's the same reason why I have the misgivings about Venom, where Eddie Brock's rivalry with Peter Parker is a core part of his character. And same case with Max Gargan, who became Scorpion. J. Jonah Jameson literally paid the guy to undergo this experimentation to create a villain that would beat Spider-Man. If you don't have
although, you know what? Having what's his name? The original J. Jonah Jameson from the Raimi movies, having him pay it out, that actually might be hilarious.
Yeah, and I mean, he does appear in Far From Home. It's
J.K. Simmons, that's his name.
It's
J.K.
just,
Simmons.
again, I mean, Morbius, there's at least a story there. But when you get to villains like Scorpion and Kraven, and it's just, I'm sorry, but trying to establish the villains first, there just needs to be more there. I mean, especially when there are other characters that are anti-heroes that you could actually do films about, like Black Cat. I mean, I've been really enjoying the current run of the comics they've been doing with Black Cat, and so that's a movie you could have that would help establish this whole Spider-Man cinematic universe. You've also got characters like Silk that could add to it. And even Spider-Woman, if you really want to try to go to bat with Marvel and really decide.
Oh, people would throw a fit if Spider-Woman made it in there.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They'd throw a fit.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's another one of those characters that you're not quite sure who has the rights. And that's my misgivings about this whole establishing the villains in the movies. You have other characters as part of the Spider-Verse you can use that are actually kind of heroes. I mean, Black Cat, she's kind of an anti-hero, so you can have that moral gray sort of character.
Even Venom, to some extent, is an anti-hero.
To an extent, but again...
Yeah. Not in the way that Black Cat is, but I mean, like, some people will make an argument, since he got his own comic run, that yes, he's had some anti-hero moments. Again, it's a hard argument to make, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially given that you had to, excise a huge important part of his origin. And granted, while there's that same argument with Black...
I'd say Kraven's a better anti-hero than Dunham, because they actually have tried to do stories with Kraven where he is the good guy, based on the fact that the people who are paying him are getting him to do something good.
Yeah, and again, it's just... Again, I'm very, very worried with what Sony is trying to do. I understand why they're trying to do it, but again, that's how we ended up with The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Exactly. Alex, anything you want to add to Morbius? Or even Venom 2?
Nah, I really got nothing on them.
Okay, so these are movies that technically didn't make the list, but people still wanted to know our input on them. And the first one, I'm glad that Romney mentioned it, because Birds of Prey. I was excited when this movie was being announced that it was being worked on. Now that I've seen a trailer for it and I've seen a lot of interviews from the actors, I am worried. Very, very worried, because unfortunately you're now getting the Hollywood approach of like, holy crap, this is going to be a feminist paradise because all of the heroes are women. This is what everybody's been screaming for. And what's even better is that one of them is a villain. So you've got to love her, right? I hate to say this to everybody, but if there was one character that stole the show in Suicide Squad, to me, it isn't technically Margot Robbie. But then again, nobody really stole the show to me in Suicide Squad.
No.
Everybody had flaws.
I mean, the only one who could really steal a show was Will Smith, but that's because it's Will Smith. I mean, if you put him in...
Yeah, and I had problems with him as Deadshot.
Well, yeah, like,
so
people are going to have problems, but, I mean, that's not even the most embarrassing thing Will Smith has done. I mean, again, with the romance film where he literally plays the devil, as soon as he appeared on screen and we were supposed to believe it was the devil, the whole audience in the theater I was seeing it at, everyone busted out in laughter.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, so that's the only way Will Smith can steal a show, and it's not because he was good as Deadshot, it's just because everyone's wondering, why the hell is Will Smith playing a villain in this movie?
Yeah. So at that point, like, I was excited when they announced the project, and I didn't care when Margot Robbie announced that she was coming back as Harley, because at that point, like, she is a good Harley. I can at least acknowledge that. But the second that we started hearing, oh, this is going to be a feminist paradise, this is going to be such an innovative movie, that already, like, anytime I hear any of that kind of speech from any of the actors, any of the directors, I'm immediately worried that I'm going to be walking into a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Because they already I get one indication on it. You haven't studied any of the source material, have you?
Nope.
No, especially when you're painting these people as the good guys. I hate to tell you this. I've read a few Birds of Prey comics, and they're more like anti-heroes than anything.
And it really depends on who's writing them. And one thing that irks me is that, after she splits up with the Joker, just like, in the comics, it took a lot of buildup and a lot of work for the character to eventually disconnect from the Joker, especially considering that you're leaving out a few key characters that were pivotal to her finally, getting over the Joker, most notably Poison Ivy. And so I look at this and I'm just like, okay, you guys are making the same mistake as Suicide Squad. You're rushing things too early. You're rushing things way too early, and the whole story of Harley leaving Joker, that's not something you can really do as a comedy. Like, maybe at the end it's like a nice comedic sort of touch to it, but again, this is something that you need to do like 2 or 3 movies down the line. You need to kind of show that slow transition of something that slowly pulls her away from the Joker, but that you're basically making the same mistake. DC, you're rushing it. You're making the same mistake. Did you not learn your lesson with Suicide Squad? Oh, okay. You're just going to go with it? Fine. Don't blame us if you crash and burn.
Pretty much. Alex, anything you want to add to Birds of Prey?
I still haven't seen the trailer, but you'll probably see it.
Okay. And the final movie we're going to be talking about, because we are running out of time, like we've actually kind of gone almost a half hour over, and that's kind of unusual for this podcast, so I think it's a good time to wrap things up. But we're going to talk about one more movie, and this one has to be talked about, even though I don't want to talk about it. And although I'm going to restrict Alex a little bit because he found some news on it, and frankly, that's going to be moved to next week, so can't talk about that. Sonic the Hedgehog. It's happening. It's on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. I'm good. I gotta do something with my Singles Awareness Day.
I mean, the Sega Twitter account pretty much put it right. If you're alone on prom night...
You couldn't pay me enough.
I mean, the Sonic the Hedgehog Twitter account put it best when Mighty Number 9 made the insult. At least Sega is there for us on prom night.
Yeah,
Sega's there for me on prom night.
Yeah, I
Just
giggled at that, but it's like, I still don't know if this movie should exist.
Yeah, well, it should, because you know what?
It's
about time.
I hope you're right, Alex. I hope you're right.
Well, I'm hoping I'm right too. So, I mean,
and if you are right, I will not go see it in the theater. I will watch it on the couch. But,
I mean, I was ready to, when they first announced not first announced it, but when they first showed the first design of Sonic, I was like, well, that's that. I'm not going to bother with this now. But now that they went to the effort of redesigning the character, and sad to say the studio also had to go bankrupt to do it, not necessarily because of that. It's just
no, they had a bunch of other things happen in the meantime.
The visual effects industry royally fucking sucks, so that's another issue for a day. But but they show me that they're at least gonna try a little bit, that they're actually gonna care a little bit. So I gotta give them the benefit of the doubt here. They could have rested on their laurels, and then I just would have been like, well, that's just another video game movie to toss in the dumpster. But you know what? You're showing me you care.
I'm kind of surprised
like
Sony just didn't tell them to
Pikachu.
rest on their laurels. We don't care. It's coming out.
Well, I think it's more because since
Yes.
Sony is at risk of losing Spider-Man, their big cash cow, they're thinking, okay, let's make sure we at least have a few other films on the horizon.
And
that
they
would
have
work.
a weird Apple employee leering at them in the bushes, so they're probably a little worried about that too.
Yeah, it's just
So-
the crazy. It's just crazy Steve in the bushes. No relation to Steve Jobs. That's just what they call him because they are too afraid to actually find out his name.
Nope. If Steve Jobs was gonna be coming for you, he'd come in this zombie form that he actually is in.
No, he would be coming
So-
in. He probably would do like the master control sort of program thing where you would just see like a whole.
No!
You would just see a whole bunch of iPods like suddenly form together, and then across all the screens, you would then see the face of Steve Jobs, and then you would have to find someone with the special like.
Oh, the master control Jobs is what you're basically saying.
Either a master control Jobs or basically a hologram comprised of a bunch of iPhones and iPods. And then the only way you can hear what he's saying is if you have AirPods.
That would be so much worse. Okay. Well, there you go. My thoughts on Sonic are I'm gonna wait on Alex on this one because if he doesn't like it, I'm not gonna like it. And even though we just barely got some new news for it, we're gonna keep that to next week. Romney, your thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog?
I mean, I'm definitely curious about it. I probably will go see it because at least here, it looks like they're not making the mistake that a lot of people have made with Sonic, where at least here, they're making it clear, yes, this is meant to be a comedy. We're not taking ourselves super seriously like Sonic 06, where it's like, oh no, this is a grand, epic, serious story. It's just like, no one's going to take this seriously. Even Sonic isn't taking this seriously. But it looks like it'll at least be a fun time of, okay, it's a nice, lighthearted action comedy that I can get behind.
Okay. All right. Well, we are a little bit over, so we're going to have to go ahead and wrap things up for the evening. So, if people want to be able to get a hold of us and be able to ask us our various opinions on best and worst of 2019, as well as what we're looking forward to in 2020, Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do they do that with you?
I'm on YouTube, and Shadowblazer3000 is my channel, and I do anime content, and I'm on social media, and I always blast out videos there. Twitter handle is at AlexJShort, so you can always be up to date with me there.
All right. And Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can always find me under my handle, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle on YouTube, Facebook, and now SoundCloud, which I'll actually be uploading stuff to SoundCloud. I'll explain more on that as soon as I actually get everything set up, but that is where you can find where my content will be hosted. If you want to interact with me, well, one place if you want to see another side of me that includes pictures of cats, pictures of food that I cook, cats, random Nintendo Switch video game tidbits, cats, and now book reviews, you can find me on Instagram under Romney Does Art, where someday I hope that username will not be a lie. And if you want to send me stories and otherwise interact with me directly, seriously, Adam has 2 kids, he's not my secretary, you can reach out to me at Twitter at Romney Reviews. And since we've already discussed the best and worst, I'm going to withhold doing any sort of recommendation. So if you want a recommendation for this week, go to my Instagram. I just uploaded a book review.
All right, yeah, and I would actually agree. Like, this is not like an official episode, so it doesn't really feel right for a Romney's book, like a Romney's book club to be here. But that's just me. And if you guys want to be able to get a hold of me, you can do so at Twitter at Drac2326. That's usually where I answer a lot of those questions that you guys want to ask me, as well as if you guys want to see pictures of my kids, random geek memes that I find funny that usually involve farts of some kind. You could also find one of my major goals this year, which is to teach myself to cook, because I'm going to be trying to take pride in the stuff that I make, even when it's something as simple as macaroni and cheese, because I didn't blacken it. Therefore, victory. So at that point, you could follow me on Instagram at Drac2326. And if you want to be able to follow the podcast directly, first things first, for those who are asking on YouTube, yes, we are still continuing on Friday nights at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, so you guys can join us next Friday for the next episode of Geek News Reviews and Opinions, and we would love to be able to have you there in the chat, especially since I have a feeling a few of those stories we're probably going to have chat involvement with. But that also being said, if you want to support the RSS feed directly and get all of the awesome content that also gets provided there, you can do so at geekynro.libsyn.com. And by that, I mean you're going to get the interesting Game Talk stuff that we were talking about. You're going to get Geek News Movie Night, because I have a feeling we're going to have a few movies this year that will fall under that umbrella. You're also going to be able to get Geek News Theater, which we have a bunch of new ideas for. So make sure that you're going to the RSS feed as well. As much as we love you supporting us on YouTube, the RSS feed just helps that much more. If you want to be able to support us on social media, you can do so at Twitter and Facebook under the exact same tagline, Geeky NRO, where you will get up-to-the-minute information on when we're going live, the stories that we might be talking about, stories that we might want your input on, things like that. You can get that information there. And also, if you want to be able to write to us and give us stories for upcoming episodes or give us feedback on the podcast that we do, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us this episode. We thank you guys so much for joining our astral selves as we are still taking a break on this wonderful Friday evening, probably to play some Kakarot or probably to play something else. But we will be back next week for more Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. So for me, for Alex, and for Omni, we will see you guys next time. And until then, happy 2020.